Please welcome the wickedly talented one and only Adele Dazeem.
My wife's name out your fucking mouth!
There's a mistake. Moonlight. Best Picture.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Waffle Press Retrospectives, Season 2, Episode 4 of the Failed Award Contenders. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me today is my co-host, Matt Garinga.
That's me. Are we already on 4? I guess
Yeah,
this is 4.
Yeah, unless I miscounted and it's actually 5. That's happened before, probably. So let's...
We've also sometimes done them out of order and then released them in a different order.
Yeah, we're, this is good that we're just... we're randomly picking numbers at the end of episodes and letting that guide us to fruition.
Yes.
But Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I went to Arizona for the weekend to visit an old pal, someone I used to podcast with, someone I'm still very close with, and I took a bunch of film. And I haven't used my film camera in like 2.5 months. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, fuck it. I got to use it. And I finished off 5 rolls of film. So that was a lot of money. And now I'm not going to eat for the week, but that's okay. It's worth it.
Well, that sounds like a really fun and invigorating weekend to have.
It was. I feel fantastic. So naturally, we're going to talk about a movie that does the opposite for the best possible reasons. Thomas Alfredson's masterpiece, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier Spy.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we're coming out strong with this one.
Yes,
because it's fucking fantastic.
It's a great movie. It's one of the best movies. Although, like, you say it's like depressing, which it fucking really is. But it's like a weird comfort movie for me. Like, I put this movie on all the fucking time.
I know exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
And my recent rewatch, I was like, Michael Clayton double feature.
Yeah, definitely. It works with Michael Clayton. Also, like, I also feel similar to Miami Vice in a lot of ways.
Oh, that one I totally get.
In that, but I think I mentioned it on the Miami Vice episode. I referenced this movie as being another example of a movie where, like, I had to watch it like 3 times before I knew what the fuck was even going on. But like, it wasn't off-putting to not know what was happening. You know,
mm-hmm.
Like it felt rewarding in a weird way.
Yeah.
Did you see this when it came out?
No, I saw it a little after.
I did see it in a theater.
Oh, please tell me.
Well, no, so I don't know if this is my arc with Thomas Alfredson, right? Mm-hmm. Let the Right One In was his previous film. And do you remember that Let the Right One In was released in the United States, I believe, the same weekend as the first Twilight movie?
I did not know that.
Remember this? I believe that's what happened.
Holy shit.
And there was like a big hullabaloo online about being like, there are 2 vampire romances out this weekend, right? Like, and one of them is like a masterpiece and the other is Twilight. Like,
that's a little funny.
Yeah, and people were like, like people online who, this was like peak like Twilight backlash, Like, yeah. So people were like, this is the real shit, Let the Right One In. So I was like, I guess I'll go see that. So, like, I went to a theater, and I think I had to sneak in because I think I was still under, what age do they let you go to R-rated movies?
I think 17.
17, yeah, I was under 17. So I probably bought a ticket for Twilight and then snuck into Let the Right One In, which is the type of shit I used to do all the time back then. And I was like kind of blown away by it, right? It's like that's a really wild movie. Have you seen that? I'm assuming.
I love that movie. I saw both of these on HBO, not the same time or anything like that, but I saw both of them on HBO when I actually saw them. Yeah.
That makes sense. And like there were a lot of people in the day that I followed, like really talked up Let the Right One In. So when Alfredson's next movie was coming, which was Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, people were like, they wouldn't shut the fuck up about it, right? Like, they were, oh my god, this movie's going to be like, this guy, he's doing a spy movie next based on this great book. And so I went to theaters, saw it, did not know what the fuck was going on throughout most of it. And then that was the general response from people being like, I remember people being like positive to mixed, but also a lot of people being like, I couldn't follow it at all, right?
Mhm.
But it was one of those movies that, like, it stuck with me. I basically watched it anytime it was on TV, probably HBO, like you said. I probably had it recorded on a DVR and just watched it over and over again. I get really into John le Carre's books at the time, like right afterwards, which helped
Yeah.
to follow the plot. And then there's that like 6-year gap between his movies, and like in that time I go from I couldn't follow this movie but I enjoyed it to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is one of the best movies of the decade. Cannot wait to see what this guy does next. And then his next movie was The fucking Snowman, which is like a train wreck of epic proportions.
I'll say one thing right now. Having revisited this movie, I see exactly how the Snowman could have ended up as
Yeah.
it did. You know, like, only because, and I think we're going to be in agreement with this, his shot composition, his writing, his direction is so meticulously crafted.
Mhm.
If you miss a moment, it throws the whole thing kind of out the window.
Yeah.
Now, I miss moments all the time with this movie because there's so many, but it's not the movie's fault. It's just like,
Mhm.
it's a lot to keep track of for my brain.
Yeah, I'm probably even like on this one, I took meticulous notes. I'm still probably gonna miss shit. Like the amount of times I've watched it.
And they didn't film like 15 to 20% of the Snowman because of budgetary reasons,
And
time
that movie
restrictions.
you can feel like Alfredson got defeated fairly early on in filming that, because so much of that movie feels like it's just coverage. Right?
Yeah.
Which probably would have made sense more in like his more meticulous style had it been like completed, but he never got there, you know? So he had like all this shit just left.
Yeah.
That's also a movie feels like everything was kind of stacked against it in a weird way.
Yeah, definitely.
You have that, you have I heard Fassbender was kind of a problem on that movie.
That makes
I've heard
sense.
stories. And then like you have the Val Kilmer situation, which is like that's no one's fault really.
Yeah,
So,
that one's just tragic. And that was the one where everyone saw for the first time, like, oh, like,
yeah.
is he okay?
Yeah.
You know, like, it was concerning. And, you know, he's not super well, but, you know, he's getting by, which is
good. He's
being taken care
he's
of.
in a movie nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, so pretty good.
So he's doing all right.
Yeah, I think you and I are both shocked by that.
Yeah,
but
hey, what are you gonna do?
We're not here to talk about that today.
Yeah, future failed award contender, Top Gun Maverick.
Well, maybe it won't be. People like that movie.
It's not gonna win shit. It'll win some technical shit maybe, but although arguably like that's all right. So like, let's say like how people are like they should add a best stunt category to the Oscars, right?
Yeah.
If you add it for a Tom Cruise movie, does Tom Cruise get one of those Oscars?
Maybe. This is a question Chad Stahelski, the great Chad Stahelski, actually brought out one time, or like in an interview, and he was saying that like, I love the enthusiasm, but who do you give it to? Is it the stunt team? Is it the stunt coordinators? Is it the guy running the stunts? Like there's a lot of factors that have to be sorted out. He's not against it because he himself came up in that world. It's just like we need more than just a suggestion. We need like the game plan.
Maybe you need it like to divide it, where it's like you have like the best like stunt whatever team, right? Like you have the guy who like organizes it, but then you have this best specific stunt in a movie, and that goes to the performer.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, there's two sound categories because sound is multi-layered, right? So stunts are also multi-layered. I think maybe that's the way to go.
I think the answer is to add 17 more awards to the Academy Awards.
Yeah. Fucking trim out all the skits and shit. No one likes them. No one remembers them.
Yeah, why do they keep trying?
I promise you. You think they'd get it at some point? Jimmy Kimmel's hosting this year, so they're probably not going to get it this year either. And I don't even hate Jimmy Kimmel. I'm just saying, you know, he's got a vibe.
Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel's going to take fucking half the directors to like a rodeo or something.
What we should really have is Conan O'Brien hosting.
Here's the thing, I don't mind like if you get a guy to come out there, get a stand-up comedian, have him come out and kind of like roast Hollywood in like the first 30 minutes, like you know, like to do like an opening monologue type thing. I don't mind that, but like then like after that, just move on. Like that get to the awards.
Somehow the fucking Golden Globes apparently did it like much better than the Oscars have the last couple of years this year because people were like fucking like We forgot that the HFPA is like one of the most evil criminal
Yeah, well, that
organizations
was
on the
weird.
planet.
I didn't watch because I was like,
I didn't either. I just saw the clips like shared around, and again, everything I said about that organization stands. It was kind of nice to see people who maybe deserve an award,
yeah.
or like the wins
Well,
went
who
to like
wins? It
mostly the right
doesn't
people.
like that's irrelevant, like to what is going on. But I think a lot of people are just. This is a weird year where I think people are actually invested in some of the movies nominated, which doesn't happen. Like general public,
Yeah, yeah.
Everything Everywhere All at Once has been like this crossover hit, and
Mhm.
that might be the like Joker of it this year, where it's like the average person went to see that movie, as
Yeah,
opposed to like
but
no
good.
one saw the Fablemans,
Yeah,
which is a shame, but. So maybe that's kind of cool, and I think it's where people are so invested in Brendan Fraser winning, even though I think most of those people like haven't seen The Whale,
yeah, yeah.
because like that would maybe change your mind.
Yeah, and like I know people are like kind of like babying him like on the internet and stuff like that, and treating him like a
Well, yeah,
petting zoo or
it's
something,
it's where
which
where
is like
people are like he is
strange.
so pure, like they're treating him like he is Paddington.
Yeah, it's like calm down,
Yeah,
calm
let's all
down.
like pull it back a little bit. Like I am
Yeah,
worried,
he,
like
he is a human
yeah, he's
being. He's
gonna
gonna
make
have
a
his
mistake
flaws,
at some point or say
and
something kind of stupid, and people are gonna fucking like turn on him. But
yeah,
yeah, he's a good actor, and I like seeing him, and I'm glad he's back. Is all.
yeah, and I think that's the thing. A lot of people are glad he's back. A lot of people have very fond memories of him, even outside of like the Mummy.
Yeah, and
It's like
is that thing of like we kind of all realize simultaneously how much we undervalued him. I mean,
yeah,
he had a bit
yeah.
part in No Sudden Moves, and he's fucking terrific.
Oh yeah, he's
And
he's the shit in that
yeah, he's
movie.
like he's like a bad guy too, like which
Yeah,
is cool. And he's
yeah.
got like
He's
some.
in Scorsese's this
I
year.
can't wait. Do we know what he's playing in that? Like if they said
I have
anything?
no idea what he's doing in that.
But yeah, I am looking forward to that a lot. Um, and that's got a hell of a cast.
Hmm.
So hopefully that will be good.
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese, I don't know. There's a guy who's really hit and miss. I mean, looking at his film, hit, hit, hit. I mean, you never know. What was the last Scorsese
Well,
movie you didn't like?
I don't think I've ever disliked a Scorsese
I didn't
movie,
like.
to be
I
honest.
didn't like Color of Money.
I like Color of Money.
Okay, I'm not even gonna fight you on it
No.
much. Like, um,
Let me take a look, like
I
a
have some
real
Kundun,
look.
so
Oh, Kundun, I liked it.
Kundun, I liked it.
Yeah, I like all of these.
Probably maybe like one of his documentaries if he covered a band I didn't give a shit about.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what? I don't love Boxcar
yeah, but
Bertha,
no one does.
but I feel
Doesn't
like,
like Boxcar Bertha.
yeah.
That's the one where Cassavetes basically went like, "You just wasted a fucking year of your life, you fucking idiot!" Like,
Yeah. Oh, that's the best. That's the best. If you're curious, anyone, look up the Cassavetes quote that Martin Scorsese
oh, I know.
has.
Here's a movie I think we
It's the
can all
best.
agree on that is bad from Scorsese. I think I've brought it up before. His documentary about Elia Kazan called
Oh no. Yeah.
Elias,
Yeah.
which hey, Marty. I mean, I know you love
Made a
movies.
documentary about a traitor.
Yeah. But I've never seen it. Maybe Scorsese does like, hey, he was a great filmmaker, but he also sucked. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guy who just fucking. That's why Tarantino is full of shit. Where he's like, directors, they all run out of steam, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. No, yeah.
So like,
He's kind of out of pocket for that.
yeah, but there's that thing where like some directors certainly like don't age gracefully, right? But I think the two
Yeah.
things that happen is that like a director either gets really formulaic, where like I think that's John Carpenter, where John Carpenter was still making John Carpenter movies like well into the 2000s, where it's like he
Hmm.
hasn't stretched at all, which people, and then it's like he lives and dies by his scripts at that point, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if the scripts aren't getting developed very well, then shit's not going to work out. Or you get directors who go off and maybe try to stretch a little bit, which is the Spielberg situation. And people are like, Spielberg, he hasn't made anything great in however the fuck long, right? And it's like, no, he's been making bangers like every year.
You just haven't been fucking watching it.
Yeah, and people are fucking. That was one where people like because Spielberg won at the Golden Globes for Best Director, right?
Yeah.
And someone was like, this was more a career award for Spielberg. And I was like, I think he maybe deserves this one more than fucking Saving Private Ryan. Like,
I'd agree with that.
or like maybe even Schindler's. Like this one, I'm like, this is the one you give it to him for, right? Like, although I probably would have given it to him for West Side Story, but hey.
I would have given it to him a couple times, including probably the ones you just mentioned, frankly.
Well, yeah, Spielberg's hard where it is kind of like Jurassic Park, Best Director, Catch Me If You Can, Best Director, Jaws, Best Director. Like, it is. Who won in '75? I think that's now. Annie Hall is Star Wars. So, remember when Annie Hall beat Star Wars?
Yeah. No aging poorly there.
Yeah.
Godfather Part 2.
No, but that's '74. So the Oscars were in '75.
Wait.
So it's whoever wins next year. Just want to. You always wonder if it was like it. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I guess.
Yeah,
like
that's good.
I like Milos Forman. Rest in peace. Although maybe I would have given it to him for Amadeus.
Yeah.
And then that way we can yell at him because you could only get the director's cut of Amadeus for the longest time. Who's finally putting out? Someone is finally putting out Amadeus where you can get the theatrical cut. I can't remember.
It's probably Criterion. I'm taking a stab in the dark there.
Yeah, maybe, but like there are a lot of these days. There are a lot of people releasing movies. So
yeah. So Shout Factory, maybe Arrow.
Mm-hmm. So
Vinegar Syndrome
presents Amadeus.
Probably not them, but
Milos Forman cast Norm Macdonald in like 2 movies.
Oh, what a legend!
And he was like, he had a big part for him, and Norm had to like talk him down because he's like, I can't act. So he plays a reporter. You ever see The People versus Larry Flint?
No.
He plays a reporter in The People versus Larry Flint, and the scene he's supposed to drive up to Larry Flint's house, right? And Norm shows up on set. And he goes, I can't drive. And so they had to hire. So now he takes a cab, and so the cab drops him off at Larry Flint's house, which doesn't make any sense. And then he's in Man on the Moon, the fucking Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman movie.
Oh yeah,
which is just strange. And he played who the fuck was it? He was Michael Richards.
Oh shit!
He plays Michael Richards because of the famous skit where Michael Richards and Andy Kaufman staged a fight on live television. Do you remember this?
No.
This is a real thing that happened. You can find it. And, people didn't... This is before the internet, so no one knew this was a hoax initially. But there was Fridays, which was basically SNL, but on Friday. And it was a skit comedy show. Michael Richards was on. Andy Kaufman, I think, was the host. And in one of the skits, he starts deliberately, like, not doing his lines. This was all staged, by the way. Like, they planned this. This wasn't, but it looks, when you watch it, it looks genuine. And at one point, Michael Richards walks off stage and walks back with the cue cards and throws them in Andy Kaufman's face. And then they get into a fight. Like, they start hitting each other. And the skit ends. And people thought it was real. Because Andy Kaufman was a psychopath.
Although Orson Welles liked him.
Of course Orson liked him. 2 lunatics hanging out. And that's that weird thing where like people are still convinced Andy Kaufman is alive today. Like, even though he's been dead for like what at what point, like, why would he keep doing this? Like, that would be wild though.
That would be, yeah.
Everyone said like he would do it on Letterman's last episode. Everyone was saying that's when Andy Kaufman's coming back.
What?
Guess what? Didn't happen. Well, it's also the guy who goes around as Tony Clifton still. You know that, right?
No, my God, what?
All right, so Tony Clifton, do you know who Tony Clifton is?
I don't.
So Tony Clifton is, I believe the story is he is Andy Kaufman's agent, right? in massive quotes. He's Andy Kaufman's agent, but he's also a lounge singer, and like he wants to be a comedian, but he's terrible and like offensive and just an awful person, right? Well, guess what? Andy Kaufman played Tony Clifton. And so people would be like, I want to interview Andy Kaufman. And they'd be like, well, call his agent, Tony Clifton. And people would call, and Andy Kaufman would pick up and pretend to be Tony Clifton. And then Kaufman hired a friend, I can't remember the friend's name, and had him play Tony Clifton. So sometimes people would be like, well, clearly that's Andy Kaufman in a lot of makeup, right? But then Tony Clifton would show up and Andy Kaufman would be on stage and people would be like, wait, what? And then that guy kept doing Tony Clifton like long after Andy Kaufman died. So people think Andy Kaufman is still Tony Clifton. And then there's the story, this is an insane story. So Jim Carrey played Andy Kaufman, right? Jim Carrey got invited to a party at the Playboy Mansion, I believe, during the production of Man on the Moon. And he goes to Hugh Hefner and he's like, hey, Hugh, I'm going to show up as Tony Clifton and like it'll be a bit, but like don't tell anyone. And Hugh Hefner was like, okay, cool. But then Hugh Hefner told everyone. And Jim Carrey, incensed, called up the guy who does Tony Clifton and had him go as Tony Clifton.
My God.
And everyone thought it was Jim Carrey. And so, like, he's going around, like, being, like, belligerent. Like, that'd be the thing. Like, he would show up and be belligerent. And, like, Andy Kaufman would, like, ask... Like, Tony Kaufman was insane. I mean, Andy Kaufman was insane. He asked the producers of Taxi to give Tony Clifton a role on Taxi. And the producers obliged. Tony Clifton showed up drunk and with a sex worker. And refused to do his lines, got fired, and then Andy Kaufman apologized for Tony's behavior, which is a thing that happened. So Tony Clifton is at the party being belligerent, and people was like, oh, it's funny. And then Carrey showed up like an hour later, and then Hugh Hefner had Tony Clifton got the shit kicked out of him by security. So, yeah. That Andy Kaufman was a crazy person.
Yeah, it's a strange man. Strange man.
And he probably died because he was crazy and believed in alternative medicine. So that's probably why he died at age 35. He didn't fake his death. But hey, you know who else faked his death? Jim Perito in the film Tinker Tailor Soldier. I had to try to get it back.
Thank you. Yeah.
What the fuck how did I get to Tony Clifton? What the fuck
Dude,
is wrong
I don't
with
even
me?
know. I don't know.
Jesus
I don't
Christ.
know anything anymore.
We're talking about like best picture films, and I got the fucking Tony Clifton. I hope people are having a good time. Don't look up any clips of Tony Clifton, by the way, because the guy who does Tony Clifton just does like offensive humor, and it's not funny. It's kind of like Neil Hamburger. Remember Neil Hamburger?
No, but we're gonna move on.
So Neil Hamburger is the fictional persona of Greg Turkington.
Okay.
He was just Neil. I knew him as Neil Hamburger for like a good 10 years. I don't think he was doing any Greg Turkington stuff for a while. And Neil Hamburger would straight up like tell like just jokes that like would get crowds to like try and beat the shit out of him. Like you can find it was because like bands would hire him and he'd come out with like martinis and be drunk, yell at the audience, and the audience is like booing him, and it's just insane. Comedians are crazy people.
They are. Is that what the movie Entertainment's about?
I believe so. You know what? I've never seen Entertainment.
I have not either.
And I like that guy's other movie, the Comedy, I believe is what it's called. Did you ever see The Comedy?
No.
With Tim Heidecker. It's
no, but I like Tim Heidecker. But also, everyone should note I got into On Cinema like during the pandemic. I missed the window before that, so I finally got into it like in 2020.
You know what? I've never watched On Cinema. I just know of it.
Oh, you'll love
I know
it.
people tell me I will, but like it's one of those where like I just haven't gotten into it.
Mm-hmm.
But Tim Heidecker's always out there doing weird shit.
Yeah.
And the comedy is basically just like, what if the character Tim Heidecker played was like a real person? And it's like just really sad and depressing and hard to watch. Like, so there's a movie. Anyway, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. All right, should we run down the cast?
Well, all right. So, we talked about how this movie is very difficult to follow, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you do when you first saw it?
I was like, what? Because I was expecting like, not like quite James Bond or something like that, but like a tight like thriller.
Yeah.
And like there are thriller elements.
Yeah, but the most thrilling
but it's
scene
really
in
a
this
drama.
movie is someone stealing a file.
Yeah.
Like that's the most intense scene in the movie, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not there's not any real there's no action really. There's like a little bit of gun stuff in it. And all of it's miserable too.
Yeah. It opens and closes with that. If you haven't seen the movie, just go watch it.
Yeah. Go watch. Maybe listen.
Talk about all of
I
it.
was going to suggest. I think this is a movie that for first-time watchers would benefit from like having like. I remember when I started Game of Thrones, I had like a family tree of like the main characters that I just held next to me while I was reading the book, right? So I could like it helped me follow everything that was going on, and I think this movie could benefit from going in knowing some of that, right?
Okay, I can agree with that.
So like I wrote down, I'll get into that in a minute, but I wrote down basically, and the only thing this list spoils is kind of like the first 5 minutes of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I'll get into that. Have you seen any other John le Carre adaptations, or have you read any of his books?
I've not read any of his books. I'm trying to think if I've seen any other adaptations.
He did a Most Wanted Man, the last Philip Seymour Hoffman movie.
No, I've not seen that.
That's really good. The Constant Gardener.
Have I seen that?
That's a very depressing film.
No, I did see that.
Okay.
I did see that with Ray Fiennes
Yeah.
and Rachel Weisz.
And there's a bunch of like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold from like the 60s with Richard Burton, which is really good.
Mm-hmm. Then we brought up The Little Drummer Girl before.
Yeah, the Park Chan-wook adaptation, which is fantastic, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I have not seen it yet. There was also a 1964 film adaptation of it. Or 1984, excuse me.
Yeah, that
84.
one is... I've never seen it, but it has a bad reputation. Even though George Roy Hill directed it, who's like a good director. Director of Slapshot.
Something called The Night Manager.
Yeah, which was a pretty good miniseries.
Okay.
Tom Hiddleston was in it. Yeah, there's some... He's got a lot of good stuff. This movie turned me into a bit of a... Like, I read a shit ton of his books right after this movie came out. Because I also... Like, I'm such a fucking... fucking bleeding heart peacenik, But I love spy fiction. Like, I love spy stories.
No, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Or it's at least very enthralling. You know
it's
what I
the
mean?
most pro cop I'll ever get, right? Right?
Yeah.
I like those stories. Maybe because it's like, it's cop shit, but it's like the intellectual version of it,
Yeah, like when someone says like, oh, I just like, a thinking man's thriller or action movie. They mean just like spy movies, even if they're not that very like intellectually like radical or anything like that.
Yeah. Although like I'm not a giant James Bond fan,
Oh, okay. See, I love
but those
James
are like
Bond.
I almost don't classify those as spy films,
Yeah, they're action movies. Like Casino Royale is maybe one of the best examples of it being like espionage based. There's very little action in that movie. Yeah, and it's the greatest movie ever made.
That's probably like it's the one where like now that I think the Craig movies are all done, like I think we can all safely say that Casino Royale was the best one.
Yeah.
Like, which it's always a shame to admit that the first one the guy did was the best one, but it kind of is.
I think he's got contenders. Like I'll hear
No,
arguments for a couple others,
I
but like
honestly
fucking
think
Casino Royale.
he's got Craig Bond has one of the best. Like he's got one of the most well-rounded of the films he did. You know,
Oh, absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
like there's deficits in some of them, but I think there's enough interesting stuff in it. There's no like what's a really bad one. Um,
Look, I know people like it. I don't like Moonraker
Moonraker's bad.
or View to a
People are
Kill.
wrong. Moonraker's bad. A View to Kill. That one's a shame because fucking you got Christopher Walken in it and Grace Jones.
No, I
It's such a
know.
mess. Um, Pierce Brosnan like kind of got fucked. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
his movies get like progressively worse,
yeah,
but the drop offs are like huge.
yeah. The drop offs because Goldeneye is so fantastic. Tomorrow Never Dies. I have an incredible soft spot for, mainly
Same.
because of Michelle Yeoh, like,
Oh yeah,
who
yeah,
is
yeah,
like
yeah.
the fucking coolest in that movie.
Yeah.
Even that like the plot of that movie is so stupid.
It is. I couldn't believe it when I was younger and I watched it. You know.
Yeah, it's so weird because Goldeneye like is ridiculous, but it's not like super ridiculous, and it feels like okay, they've updated Bond for the '90s, and then by Die Another Day, it's like Space Laser and Ice Castle, like
Yeah.
which Die Another Day is like a train wreck.
Yeah.
And
There's a big like defending squad of that movie, and I don't hate that one. I don't really have an interest in watching it. Like it's a bit much for me.
they are dead wrong. Die Another Day is a horrible film. Die Another Day is really bad. I'm sorry. Like there is some good stuff in it. It's great to watch movies that still have practical action in it. It's also like it feels like
Like the tsunami, the ice tsunami,
yeah, no.
which was all done practically.
Yeah. Fuck you. But there's also the like it's one of the last action spy films that doesn't feel tainted by 9/11, you know? Even though it was released in 2002, which might have hurt it.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? It doesn't. There's no attempt to. How do you say? Like, there's no like. It doesn't do what Casino Royale eventually does, right? Which I love Casino
Yeah.
Royale, but also there is kind of. I do kind of miss the more absurd Bondness, you know. And Die Another Day is certainly absurd. Also, all right. The villain in Die Another Day has diamonds in his face.
Yeah.
They
Oh, I know exactly what you're
they
talking about.
never call him Diamond Face. How? Why even bother? Like what is that really? Like that's crazy to me.
It is.
This is a series
It
with a guy
is.
named Goldfinger. Like
Yeah.
Goldfinger. Isn't Goldfinger just the best villain? He's gonna blow up Fort Knox just to increase the value of his own gold.
Yeah. It's like, but you know what? Like, it's ridiculous, but it's also like, you hear some of these fuckers talk now. It's like, yeah, they probably do
Well,
that
that's
if
what
they
is
could.
crazy about the Craig Bond movies is that they went like that. The first movie is so much about just financing terrorism, right?
Mhm.
It's like, and then Quantum of Solace, which is about a guy stealing water. Like when that came out in 2008, people were like, "That's a little too extreme," right?
Yeah. After the subtleties of Casino Royale, and now you're like,
But
well,
now we go to No Time to Die, which is like, isn't the guy in that trying to like unleash a virus that'll kill like half the planet or something?
no, but he's selling it though.
Yeah.
This is the interesting thing about the Craig ones. After 9/11, they could have pivoted to like some really, really uncomfortable shit.
Yeah,
But all the villains are like the financiers
yeah.
of terror.
Now, that's what's smart, but what I'm saying is that by the time No Time to Die comes out, we're back to absurd villains, right? Like he's got an absurd plot, and it doesn't feel far fetched anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's what's crazy about the whole fucking Daniel Craig arc. But hey,
Well, I think that's actually like we're not completely off base there because what is the biggest thing the Bond movies are going to have to struggle with going in the future is like incorporating the thrills of espionage, which are fictionalized. Real espionage is probably more like this movie, just depressing, and your life is going to be worthless.
yeah. I don't know if you know John le Carre, whose real name was David Cornwell. He was a spy. So,
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah, although Ian Fleming was also a spy.
Yeah.
But, like, I think he was more into, like, he had a weird sadism to him that he seemed more interested in. There's a hilarious photo of, like, 80-something John le Carre with Florence Pugh. I don't know why I find it so funny. Where she was in The Little Drummer Girl. But if you like the financier angle, though, of the Craig Bonds, definitely watch Most Wanted Man. That's what that movie is mostly about. Really good. Another one that, like, it's just, like, crushing by the end of it. But goddamn, and it's Philip Seymour Hoffman's so fucking good in it. It was a shame. I went to see that movie the day Robin Williams died.
Oh.
Yeah. I went to go meet a friend at the theater. I stop at a fucking McDonald's and they have CNN. Who thought it was a good idea to have CNN at McDonald's?
I know,
Like,
right?
I'm
There's
already
children
miserable because I'm eating at McDonald's. So, and then I look up on the screen. It's like, oh, by the way, Robin Williams just died.
I had McDonald's recently for the first time in like years, and I just felt miserable the rest of the day. So having to do that and then find out that Philip Seymour Hoffman died, like, I would not recover for weeks.
Yeah, it was rough. Yeah, definitely check out A Most Wanted Man. I don't think that director has that guy done anything.
I don't think so.
Oh, you know what? He did a movie called Life, which isn't the Life, the space horror movie Life.
Yeah, the bad one.
Yeah, the movie that's better than Alien Covenant. But
no, it's not.
I've never even heard of it, and that was the last movie he did, and that was 2015. So that's a shame.
Yeah, that is a
Looks
shame.
like he's been doing some documentaries though. So
okay. Well, here's something about Ian Fleming that I just found out recently. His cousin was Christopher Lee.
Oh yeah.
His step cousin, excuse me.
Well, weren't they part of the same unit at one point?
I don't know if they were the same unit, but they were both spies during World War II,
like
and they both 100% killed Nazis.
Yeah, it was him, Christopher Lee, and Roald Dahl were like all part of like the same like kind of organization at one point. And yeah, and Christopher Lee definitely stabbed some Nazis.
Yeah, and then he also apparently was like the inspiration for James, like the main inspiration for James Bond.
That's kind of awesome, honestly.
That is, Christopher Lee has the greatest life in human history.
Yeah, Christopher Lee is not dead; he just went home. Like, because like, goddamn, man. Yeah. So, but John le Carre is very much like a response to James Bond. In fact, I think there's like like this movie and the story Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy in particular have a whole section that feels like a deconstruction of the James Bond character. We'll get to that. Anything else you want to say?
I guess in the lead-in, no. I think we can just head into it.
Okay. Let's break down exactly what the fuck this movie is about.
All right.
Which is also I guess the other thing we need to talk about is that this has been adapted before, right? And it was adapted into a miniseries for BBC television, starring Alec Guinness as George Smiley.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And
that's fantastic.
Just to know how much. Here's what's insane. I cannot really say the movie trimmed anything down. They basically hit all the same beats. Some stuff is extended. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the miniseries, was 7 episodes long. This movie is 2 hours. So, it's interesting. I saw this first, so I like the movie more, but I did enjoy the miniseries. But that's a lot more drawn out, and it's a lot more like they go into rooms and like they might as well talk directly to the camera to make sure everyone's on the same page as to what's happening. Like, it's a lot more straightforward, but it is very good. And also the character of George Smiley. Do you know this is a recurring character in le Carre's work?
It's like a series of books, right? Or is it just like a character that hops around?
There's the trilogy, which Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is the first part of a trilogy. which is called the Karla trilogy. Karla being the head of Moscow Center, the KGB organization that is directly against Smiley's group. I can't remember. I don't. There's Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. There's the Honorable Schoolboy, which I don't believe has ever been adapted into a film or television. And then the third and last one is Smiley's People. And Smiley's People has been adapted and was adapted starring Alec Guinness again. Also, Karla makes an appearance in the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy miniseries. Do you know who plays him?
I do not.
Patrick Stewart.
Wow. Wow.
It's interesting. And it's a good thing to watch where you just watch, like, here's two ways to adapt the same material. And it's kind of nuts. But then George Smiley appears sometimes as a minor character, sometimes as a major character in a bunch of other Le Carre books, like Call for the Dead, Murder of Quality, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Looking Glass War, and then, like, the last book Le Carre wrote, because he passed away in 2020, A Legacy of Spies, which I haven't read, but I believe that book is kind of a bit of a reckoning for Smiley and some of the questionable things he was involved in his career. Specifically, the events, I think, from what I understand, this is what I've just heard, I haven't actually read it, but specifically the events of The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which is one of those, like, just another fucking depressing story about how being a spy kind of sucks. But I enjoy them. Although I haven't read them in a while. Since I've gotten more left-leaning in my years, I might brush up against some of the politics in it, you know? Although I know the writer was a very vocal opponent of Donald Trump and Putin and people like that. In the last few years, he was, like, complaining about them and complaining about Brexit.
That's good sign.
And I think he also wrote a piece for he wrote some op-ed when the Iraq War was happening that was titled, like, Has the West Lost Its Mind? So it was basically like, this is the dumbest idea ever. Don't invade Iraq. 2 months prior to the invasion, the Time published a Le Carre essay, The United States Has Gone Mad, criticizing the build-up to the Iraq War and President George W. Bush's response to the September 11th attacks, calling it worse than McCarthyism, worse than the Bay of Pigs, and in the long term, potentially more disastrous than the Vietnam War. Well, he was right about that. And beyond anything Osama bin Laden could have hoped for in his nastiest dreams. That's kind of accurate, honestly.
Yeah.
And he participated in protests against the Iraq War.
All right.
So, hey, I mean, that's cool stuff. I think he still kind of falls on the side of, like, you know, like, I think he kind of does believe in, like, I think he has the, who's the guy who created The Wire?
David Simon.
I think he's kind of like David Simon-esque, but, like, that show shows all the problems with the police, but doesn't really suggest we should ever do away with the police, you know? Mm-hmm. I think there's a sort of underlying, like, if the right people were in the right position, we could all make all this stuff work, you know?
Yeah.
Because this is also a movie very much about, like, how ladder climbers will, like, get everyone killed. You know? Mm-hmm. So wild stuff. So yeah, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is specifically the story about a former spy at the start of this story named George Smiley trying to find a mole at the top of the circus being the name for the British intelligence agency. And they've narrowed in on 4 suspects, which are the 4 top guys, right? So that's the basic setup of the movie. And
how many viewings did it take you to, like, fully follow the trajectory of this story?
3.
Okay.
I would say 3 is when it really clicked. Which I believe is probably the same I did for Miami Vice, right?
Yeah, and here's the thing I'll tell people right now. I think Miami Vice, I refer to it like almost as like elemental. You know, like you just kind of like feel the people and their surroundings constantly, and their emotions are so like they're withdrawn, but they're heightened. This you feel like procedurally. You feel like every little like click of a pen and like off-camera phone conversation. You know, like
What if
that's how I got
if
into
Miami
it.
Vice is elemental, this is structural. You know, like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is you just it's almost a movie about just how fucking terrible it must be to live in England. Like, because like goddamn, the production design in this movie is psychotic. Like it is so goddamn good. You know, like every
Mhm.
set, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's such like with such a maximum impact to it, but there's also such a closeness to just the way the offices are, the way just hallways are, the commutes. I mean, Smiley feels like most suffocated when he's out walking London streets. And the only time we really get something open is like the brief like Ricky Tar interlude where he's with the girl, right? Which is like has him driving
Mhm.
around and stuff, and that ends disastrously.
Yeah.
And there's so much of just and like what's his name? Thomas Alverton uses so much of the kind of planned cityness of London to kind of show Smiley's sort of thinking, right? They were
Mhm.
constantly getting shots of the train. There's a specifically, it's not exactly subtle, but we cut back to the train, like with the signal stopping and starting when Smiley is coming to the conclusion as to what Carla's plan is, right? Where he's
Yeah.
listening to the Ricky Tar interview over and over again. So there's a very oppressive and systematic atmosphere to this whole movie.
Oh my god, it's so fucking
I
good.
know.
And he insists on shooting on like telephoto lenses. He said, I believe, like in a commentary or something, the widest angle lens they used was like a 50 millimeter. And after you go wider than 50 millimeter, which is smaller numerically, so like let's say like a 35 millimeter, the background becomes more prominent than the foreground,
Yeah.
right? I call bullshit though, just one time because there's that one scene early on where like it's like 2 minutes into the movie where it's like the wide shot of their little office space, and you can see like everything, and the people in the foreground are like kind of enveloped by the background of the layout of the office. It's not a negative. I'm just like, I think you guys forgot one, but whatever.
Hey, you know,
I guess when you're like accounting for literally every image of this film, you're gonna miss
there are
something
like it's
eventually.
where it is so precise this movie that there are a couple of moments that feel like coverage shots that got into the movie, but like they're not that jarring. They're just noticeable because so much of the other movie isn't that, right? Uh,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's definitely one bit of voiceover that I noticed
Yes.
that did need to be there.
That was the exact moment when I was like, I see exactly what happened to this
Yeah,
man now.
exactly. I had the
You
same notes
know,
because
it's in the car, right?
is it the car? I have it where they go to Control's apartment. Is this maybe we noticed two different ones?
Oh, okay.
Um,
Is yours in the back half of the movie?
Mine's early on.
Okay, so is mine.
So they're going to Control's apartment, and Smiley says, "I'm sure you got the keys for Control's apartment." And like no one's on screen. Like it's clearly voiceover that was done later to explain, "Hey, we're about to go to Control's apartment."
Okay, then yes, same
Okay,
spot
okay.
then.
I did not remember the car detail. So I was so caught off guard. But like that's one moment in this 2 hour movie, whereas the snowman that happens like every 5 minutes.
I know it's so
Yeah.
bad.
And also another thing compared to someone, the dialogue is so minimal for I would say like the first 40 minutes of this movie. Like there is
Yeah.
dialogue, but it is at a fucking minimum. You know, there.
Yeah, the whole movie, it's I would say it's like
It
minimalist,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
but
not just the
it
dialogue,
definitely
but like
picks up. The dialogue definitely picks up as it goes along.
yeah,
Like once Ricky Tar enters the picture and then Smiley gives like his whole monologue, you can definitely feel a bit of an uptick. But like the first 40 minutes, no one is sitting down and telling you what's going on, right?
Yeah, I checked out some interviews with like Mark Kermode and Gary Oldman, Thomas Alfredson, just like a little flourish background stuff, right? And Gary Oldman's like, yeah, I think it's like 15 minutes before I have a word of dialogue. And I timed it, and it's like pretty close. It's like,
And
it's
is
like
his
16, 17 minutes.
and is his first line just him going, "I'm retired"? Like it's just him being like, "I don't even want to be here." But which is kind of nuts when you think about it.
Yeah, and there's this weird sort of like reaction I think a lot of modern screenwriting, I'll say, professors or leaders tend to have, where it's like, well, your protagonist has to want something,
Yeah.
right? We need to feel that from the get-go so we know where they're going. And I understand the necessity to learn that at the top. I think everyone should have that approach when they're first getting started.
Yeah.
Understand that that's not always the case, because here it feels like he doesn't want anything for like the whole movie.
I mean, there's the complicated relationship with his wife, which is like, but like that's also something not revealed until like way into the movie.
Yeah.
You know? And also, here's another thing that's kind of insane. I think this movie just assumes you have read the book or have seen the miniseries. Like, I think that's partly why it feels like it can be so brisk, just as a comparison. This isn't like a spoiler too much in case people like have not are listening and haven't decided whether or not they want to watch yet. But the opening of the miniseries is very similar to the opening of the movie, which is Control meeting with Jim Perito, right? But the miniseries is very direct, being like, "Hello, Jim." There's a lot of like fucking British talking bullshit.
Yeah.
He's like, "So I need you to go to Budapest. I need the name of a mole. He's at the top of the circus being our organization, dear friend. And here are the code names, and it's based after the nursery rhyme, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor," which is nursery rhyme. I guess I had never heard it, honestly.
Yeah, it might be a British nursery
I guess
rhyme.
the fucking British with their nonsense.
I know.
It's Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor, Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief. So that's the full nursery rhyme. And in this, he subs out. And he's like, "Okay, this guy is Tinker, this guy is Tailor, this guy is whatever." Like he lays out the whole thing right at the start. That's like the opening of that miniseries, which is probably the correct way to do a story, right? Like, quote unquote, correct way to do a story. Here, let me look at my notes real quick. I'm trying to figure out when is the exact moment we get. I think we do not get the nursery rhyme Tinker Tailor until an hour and 15 into this movie.
Jesus.
Like, they don't even bother to explain what Tinker Tailor is until that deep into the movie. So it is a movie where, like, you kind of either have to know the material going in or you have seen the movie to really vibe with it, you know? Which is an interesting choice. I think it works. But, like, it also is something where, like, you would never tell someone to write a story this way.
Yeah. And I would also encourage people not to try this the first time. You know, like this is something you kind of got to build up to. You got to learn the rules before you break them, and all that shit.
It does feel like maybe there was an edit of the movie that was more straightforward, right? Because we do open with Jim meeting with Control. But then and he's like, he tells him, like, "I need you to go to find the name of the mole at the top of the circus," right? That's the opening. We get that out of the way. But we don't get Tinker Tailor. Then we get the rest of that scene an hour and 15 into the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like you could have easily put that scene in the opening, you know? Which, like, is quote-unquote the correct way to do it, but I don't mind it. And I kind of like the way it, like, ramps up the tension once you know what it is.
Well, it ramps up the tension too, but it's also like conveying the story to the audience the same way the characters are piecing it together in the film. You know what I mean?
That's the other really, like, this almost feels like first year film school analysis of this movie, but I think it's true. This movie is trying to get you to watch this movie like you're a spy almost. You know?
Yeah.
Like, where you're looking for the little details everywhere. They want to put you in the same mentality as George Smiley, where everything means something. but also maybe not. Like,
Yeah.
so like it also is about how this sort of shit can drive you insane. But hey.
It also opens with a mother getting shot in the head.
Oh yeah. Oh, all right,
with her baby in her arms.
Here's something though. So like, this is a big theme of this movie is like you can't tell who you can trust, right? Like who is what. So that woman gets shot in the opening by complete accident. Now, pretty much everyone on that street is a spy in that opening, right? Like they have the whole street.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So like, is that woman also a spy?
But the baby's moving.
Well, yeah, no, the baby was real. So, like, there's two insanely dark details here. One is that it was a mother that was shot, which is awful, right? The other is that she was a spy, she was in on it, and they got her a baby to be a prop. Like, those are both very dark things.
Those are.
And I don't.
And the read is valid.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where like you don't really know, and that's what's fucked up about it. I mean, that opening is just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, yeah.
Let me break down. I'm gonna break down all the characters.
Okay, let's do it.
Do like a really quick version of it. So like I said, Control the Circus is the name of the British intelligence. That's also the book. Tinker Tailor is famous for kind of letting a lot of the lingo out there that spies really use. Like that, it's known for popularizing a lot of this stuff that it's
like Ocean's 12.
Fuck off. But oh wait, you know Park Chan-wook almost directed this?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my god.
I mean, clearly he was circling Lucari, so like because he does do the Little Drummer Girl later.
Yeah, he would have been great. I think this is Alfredson.
He would have been good. He would have been good. But Little Drummer Girl does honestly feel more up Chan-wook's alley. Once you see it, it seems a lot more in his wheelhouse. He almost did The Revenant.
I know.
So we were like,
that one would have been fucking fantastic.
With Sam Jackson was going to be in it. So we were like robbed of literally the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
That one's a real bummer. But okay, so the circus, at the top of the circus was Control. Control, that's the only name he's given, is Control, played by John Hurt. Now, at the start of the movie, he's forced out based on the botched Budapest operation, right? So he's forced out. He dies like within the first 5 minutes. So I don't feel like that's a spoiler to just tell people. I feel like I could tell someone this before watching the movie, and that would be fine. George Smiley, who is he gets the code name Beggar Man in the Tinker Tailor rhyme. He was Control's right hand man, is also forced out with him following the Budapest operation. Percy, I guess it's George Smiley, played by Gary Oldman, who does a fantastic job. I just gotta say.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Playing a real like kind of measured. I don't know if measured's the right word, but he's such a like locked down guy in this movie.
Yeah, and he in one of the interviews I saw, he also mentioned that like he felt like he was waiting 30 years to play a role like that because he gets a lot of notoriety, for like the everyone and shit like that.
And he gets one moment like that in this movie, and it's like a fucking shotgun blast to the face. Like what happens. It's the only time Smiley's like that the whole movie, and it's perfect. It's like they hired Gary Oldman for that one line almost. So Percy Alaline, played by the fucking great Toby Jones, who I just love. I love Toby Jones.
He is a delight every time he pops up on screen. I really hope he gets starring leading roles like more often because he's fantastic in everything.
Oh god, he was in Fallen Kingdom. I forgot.
No, he's fun in that. He's fun.
But like he deserves better. Oh god, he was in Empire of Light, the movie we just all agreed to forget exists. Like
I haven't seen it, but Deakins got a nomination, and that's just because he's Roger Deakins. I have to respect that.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until this moment. He was
Yep,
front and
it's
center in that trailer. Um,
oh.
Someone knows the power of Toby Jones because he's also front and center in the Indiana Jones 5 trailer. Like,
Yeah.
they made him. You see more of him in that than I think Mads Mikkelsen.
I don't think Mads Mikkelsen's in
He's
it.
in it
Is
for
he?
half a second.
Oh, there
You
you
see him
go.
as a Nazi. And I'm honestly, the only thing I'm excited about with that movie is Toby Jones. Like, I'm sure Mads will be good, but also, like, Mads has been wasted in villain roles before. So, wait,
I'm holding hope because of James Mangold.
yeah.
I'm holding out.
Toby Jones was also in The Snowman, which,
Oh God, I forgot.
yeah, there's a lot of, yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
He's in Atomic Blonde. Remember Atomic Blonde?
Yeah. I like Atomic Blonde.
I'm trying to think of, like, he's Armin Zola in the fucking Captain America movies.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, no, he's so much fun in that.
I would argue
the first one.
his appearance in the second one got me invested in the MCU for about 5 more years. Because that appearance is so stupid that it's kind of brilliant. Where he's like, his brain has been put into a bunch of like 1980s computers.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that. That's when I was like, okay, we're going here
Yeah.
now. I'm buckling up.
Because it felt like at that moment, like so many movies at that time, I think we were pivoting so much in the like gritty realism direction that when something that dumb happened in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I was kind of like, okay, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
We are both of us out of time.
No, he's fucking great. He's in that one scene for that movie.
I know.
In an exposition dump, and it was like, fuck yeah, dude.
See, guys like that, they're so underrated. If there's a guy who can do exposition good, like fucking hold on to him. Like,
Yeah.
they really matter.
Although I do really like his scene with Tommy Lee Jones in the first Avenger, where he's like, "You don't like steak? It disagrees with me."
He has
Get
the
the
great.
rumbly tumblies.
He has the great. His target is everywhere. Oh, that's Toby Jones rules. I'm just looking.
How about cyanide? Does that give you the rumbly tumblies too? Like,
yeah,
man, that first one's good. I don't know, man.
Oh,
I know you're not crazy about it, but
he was Karl Rove in W, which he's fine in it. He's honestly good in it. That movie's not good.
Yeah.
He was Truman Capote in the other Capote movie.
That's pretty good casting.
Yeah,
frankly.
honestly, it's great casting, but he was probably the only person happy when Philip Seymour Hoffman died.
Oh,
That's a joke. He was Dolby the house elf.
Oh, of course.
Remember Dolby? He gets stabbed.
That's so fucking
Dolby
sad.
is a free elf. Oh, fuck you. That shit's aged really well.
It's just so sad.
Yeah. You know, like they did Vegas odds on like what character would die in Deathly Hallows.
That's so fucking funny.
Dolby was like 100 to 1 or something like insane like that. Like there was no chance he was gonna. So if you bet on Dolby, you would have won a shit ton of money.
You never have to work again because you bet on the house elf biting it.
Yeah, exactly. Someone could have profited off that fucking elf. Oh, he was the pickpocket in The Adventures of Tintin.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, he's great in that. Has he done any other Spielbergs? I hope he works with Spielberg. Spielberg feels like he gets some use out of him.
Yeah, I don't think he has, but he could do it.
He did that. Did you ever see Bavarian Sound Studio?
No.
It's like a psychological horror film. He's the lead in that. It's good. I like it. I don't know how it's aged. It was one of those where like 2012. It was like, man, this is fucked up. So maybe it was trying to be like a little bit Italian. It's like he's a sound engineer who normally does children's films. Who's been hired to work on like a horror film, and it makes him upset.
No. Is it like Blowout?
No.
Okay.
But, I liked it. He was in Your Highness.
Okay.
Remember Your Highness?
Why does that movie keep coming up?
Because I don't know. It does seem that is a weird like. Someone really believed in that movie. and they really shouldn't have.
I wonder if that one's got like a redemption arc coming up.
Let me check what people are saying on Letterboxd right now, just real quick, because like that's the place where it would start. Your Highness. The top review is a 5-star review,
Oh my god!
but it's just 2 quotes from the movie. A 3.5-star review saying Natalie Portman should have won an Oscar, and then a 1-star review saying that Natalie Portman is good in it, but everything else is bad. And then the people I follow have all given it like 3 stars, which is like middle of the road. So I don't know. Maybe there's a redemption in the future.
Yeah, anything's possible.
Anything's possible with Bush in the White House. Then we get Bill Hayden is Tailor, played by the great Colin Firth.
Yeah, the original Paddington.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, and then the producers and directors were like, "We don't think you're the right voice for the role," and he agreed and he obliged.
Yeah,
and
that
then,
makes sense. I like Colin Firth, but
yeah, me too.
His voice coming out of that bear might not have worked.
He's a little too elderly statesman.
Yeah. Then we get Roy Bland. He's Soldier, another member. He does feel like the muscle of the group, but maybe this is because he's so imposing.
Yeah,
By,
which is why you cast Kieran Hines.
Yes. And then the last member at the top of the circus is Toby Esterhaus, played by, I don't actually know that actor.
David Densick. You know what other spy thriller he was in?
Oh, he's in No Time to Die.
Yeah, he's the racist Russian doctor.
Oh my god, okay. Oh, he was on Chernobyl, that makes sense.
Oh yeah. He's like typecast as like weird Russian guy, but whatever.
He's in both Girl with the Dragon Tattoos.
What?
He's in the Swedish and American Dragon Tattoo.
Well,
as 2 completely different characters also.
All right.
Remember the Girl with the
Well,
Dragon
you know
Tattoo?
who did the Yeah. Do you know who directed the sequels to that?
Well, didn't the same guy do the first 3? The Swedish ones. The Swedish ones.
Nope.
Oh.
The first film was directed by Niels Arden Oplov. The sequels were directed by Daniel Alfredson.
Oh.
Thomas Alfredson's brother.
Oh, okay. That makes some sense, actually. I don't love those movies, and there's definitely they didn't have any money to make those sequels.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about those either.
Remember the Girl in the Spider's Web?
Oh my god. Fucking I have a soft spot for that director, even though he's made vile, disgusting films. That's a terrible movie, and I don't know what the fuck happened there.
That was a weird one where what's her name was also she was ready to do. Rooney Mara was like, I want to do the sequel, but they never called me.
Yeah,
which is just crazy. She was kind of say what you will about that movie, but she's great in it.
She's a great actress. Yeah. She's not. I don't know. She hasn't really been given opportunities.
No, I think the Girl with Dragon Tattoo was supposed to be that, and then that movie kind of it did well, but also not well enough to get the sequels made, even though it was clearly teed up to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's like David Fincher kind of has that problem with Rosamund Pike and Gone Girl too. Everyone's like, "Whoa, she's gonna be the new It Girl," and she's just not.
Yeah.
Even though another very talented actress, and I'm not saying it's David Fincher's fault. I'm just saying what a weird, unfortunate track record.
Yeah. Well, also David Fincher has a weird track record. I was just is he just burning bridges everywhere or something? Why can't he get movies made? Girl with Dragon Tattoo and Gone Girl were both hits. Mm-hmm. And Social Network, 3 in a row. Girl with Dragon Tattoo, you could argue underperformed, but it's still made. That's a movie with an insanely violent rape scene in it, and it made $200 million. right?
Mhm.
That's insane. And
yeah, he's got to just have his reputation precedes him, I guess, is what I'll
well,
say.
because we'll actually bring him up twice going forward, but there's like him signing on or like dropping out of projects and shit and like pissing some very powerful producers off in the process. And then he just ends up at Netflix, which is where he does Mank, and he's doing The Killer now, right? That's a Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Although,
Michael
did Netflix
Fassbender.
make it, or did they just pick it up?
I think they're making. I think it's a full-on Netflix original.
But also,
because remember, he also did House of Cards with them.
he just did the pilot for House of Cards.
Yeah, but he executive produced. Like he put his name on it, and that's what mostly gets it made.
Yeah, but and then he has Mindhunter, which also was one of Netflix's biggest hits. Everyone loved it, and then they were just like, we're not. It's not worth bringing it back. Like,
yeah, I don't understand that at all, and I never even saw Mindhunter.
And part of it I've heard is just that like Fincher, it's that Fincher doing like 1,000 takes type thing. But also the weird thing about it is that most actors that have worked with Fincher don't complain about the many takes.
Like, and if they do, they're not really back, and then you don't hear about it.
Well, I think Robert Downey Jr. didn't like it on Zodiac. I think he was upset about that. And then I'm assuming, I think what I've heard is that Daniel Craig really brushed up against it for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And that maybe is what affected the sequel getting made.
It could have. It's funny, though. Another conversation I listened to recently for Glass Onion, and he was saying, like, he was asked about his relationship with David Fincher, and he was like, we had a ball together, and, like, it was fun. Okay. Like, we had a lot of... So, but he's also changed his dialogue about how he speaks about James Bond, I'm not saying he can't feel differently, like, nostalgically or anything like that. I'm just saying, time sometimes does heal wounds, I guess.
Because I remember the story being like he was a big obstacle to getting the second one made, and he's part of the reason why they never made a sequel to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Is that he?
Well, you know what? Actually, that might be a good point, because Dragon Tattoo comes out 2011, Skyfall 2012, and then almost immediately they work on Spectre for like fucking forever, and everyone's like, "I'm gonna kill myself."
Spectre was like a disastrous production, and then I think I think Craig wanted a lot of money up front for the Dragon Tattoo sequels, but I don't know. It's strange.
But here's a segue back to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So Fincher's got like the bajillion takes per whatever, right? Another comment by Gary Oldman was that he was like, it was like a 2-take show. Like it wasn't heavy at all, and they just knew what they wanted, you know, and which is maybe the lack of general coverage and stuff like that. And like people are taught to get coverage in film school because you should cover your ass, but plenty of filmmakers don't allot time for it, because if you're setting up shots for coverage, you're also spending time to set up those shots, which might eat into your time for the stuff you want to get. And then if you end up not using like your B camera or C camera, then it's like, well, now you're wasting time and money and resources. Well, it's also it seems like a pretty breezy shoot.
I also think everyone who wants to be like a great director, like anyone who fancies themselves a great director, has the whole like Alfred Hitchcock Rebecca story in the back of their head. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Where what is it? It's who's the guy? Let me check just so I get the name right. That's one of the David O. Selznick produced Hitchcock films, right? And Selznick basically when Selznick made movies, he basically edited them himself, right? Like, he was like, I'm going to make it the way I want. And Hitchcock, knowing this, I believe the story is he shot Rebecca in chronological order and then did like no coverage and was like, you're going to use the shots I give you. Like, so like you literally couldn't edit it any other way. So
fantastic.
And I think that's where Hitchcock gets his kind of style. Like that's why he storyboards so many of his movies before he made them. Rebecca, good movie.
Yeah, very good movie. They remade that recently.
They did, and it was like it got like savage. I never watched it.
Yeah, I like that.
I know that dude. What the fuck happened there?
I don't know. He did High Rise like right before that, and I fucking High Rise. I love High Rise.
I don't think I've seen High Rise yet.
Okay, check it out.
But I read the book. I love the J.G. Ballard book.
It's one of those movies that made me feel like my head was spinning as I was watching it at a
And
certain point.
I am a defender of Free Fire.
Same.
I think I brought it
same.
up. I don't know why that movie got such a like beat down on it. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like it's a masterpiece, but it's like for what it is.
It's like a genre exercise. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Do people just hate what's her name, Brie Larson? Like, is that
They might.
Is that really
and like
what it is? Like,
I might maybe because that was like 2016. She wasn't even Captain Marvel yet.
yeah, people are weird, man.
People are strange.
And now he's doing Meg 2.
Yeah.
I think we've had this conversation before on the podcast, so apologies to everyone, but
yeah.
it's still weird.
I'm excited for the Meg 2.
Ben Wheatley was like that weird like Kill List and Sightseers back to back was like this really like, oh, this guy's someone to watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like I don't know what happened, man. And it's like everyone turned on him, and then I hadn't seen In the Earth, but that also got fairly bad reviews. Although Rotten Tomatoes
it did. I liked it a lot.
I have to see it. Maybe I'm just I think I need to learn that Letterboxd is wrong. I don't know if there's a better way to put it, but it seems like Letterboxd is a site dedicated to the hatred of film.
I think people forget that other people are making art.
Mm.
And sometimes it is algorithms determining what people get to make the art.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little easier to forget the complicated nature of the making of these things. Yeah. So it's easier to both overwhelmingly praise and cast stones. And we're all guilty of it. Just something to keep in mind, as we move forward.
But there's also so much of it where it's like, it feels like so many reviews of people going like, I know tropes in movies, or
more like Tinker Tailor boring spy,
or like, oh, look. Here's something weird. Do you remember this? I think this just stopped just because of Nope, which is I'm happy for. But it felt like people were out for Hoyt Van Hoytman for a while. Like I saw people complaining up and down about the guy. Mainly because he did Spectre.
That's a good looking movie too.
But I think it was that thing of like people were like, but it's no Skyfall. Like, remember? Like,
yeah.
Which, that had Roger Deakins, who is great. I'm not going to deny it, but it was that weird, like, because it wasn't Roger Deakins, they were out for him. And people complained about that shit forever. And like people were I'm not saying they were down on him for Dunkirk, but they weren't like into it. And then they were really like, Ad Astra, fuck that. Like, and I was like, are you people insane? And then I think Nope has got people to just shut the fuck up. But
yeah, because he clearly knows what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah, but like for a while, I'm like, you don't shit talk the guy who did Tinker Tailor, man. Like, this is one of the best looking movies of the 2010s, and just driving me nuts. Let's see. And I think everyone else we can just go through as they are introduced in the movie.
Yeah.
That's the basic setup. The only other guy is Jim Preto, I guess we can just talk about early, played by Mark Strong.
Yes.
Is the agent sent to Budapest to get the name of the mole at the top of the circus. Shit does not go well.
No.
Well, the lady gets shot in the head. He gets shot, presumed dead. And that's a just intense scene.
Yeah. Is this the best Mark Strong performance?
Ooh.
He is fantastic.
Strong but also Mark Strong is a guy who like he does his fucking job when he shows up.
Yes.
He's
fucking good in Green Lantern.
He's good in Green Lantern. He's good in the Kingsman movies, which he really didn't need to be.
No, he's great in those. So is Colin Firth.
He's good
frankly.
in Shazam. Like he's.
Oh yeah, I like Shazam, but no, he's real fun as that villain.
No one would have complained if he phoned it in on Shazam. What I'm saying. So he's good in fucking Rock and Rolla.
Oh yeah, well everyone.
The old Archie slap, is that what it?
Yeah.
As Lord Blackwood in Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
I can't believe Blackwood ended up being a bad guy.
It's actually kind of a shock he wasn't in Guy Ritchie's King Arthur.
Yeah, it is a little shocking.
Yeah, it's like the one he wasn't in.
What's the one? He's also, I really like him in Zero Dark 30 as the one guy. I think he doesn't even really have he just has a one. I think he's just called George or something.
Yeah.
No, George Panetta. He has that speech where he comes in and complains about all the bad intelligence everyone's getting. And I just remember, bring me people to kill, which is psychotic.
Yeah.
He's good. But he's not in this movie a ton. But when he is, it is kind of like the most compelling thing on the screen. And we do get different levels of Mark Strong, it feels like. Yeah, I can't think of one because he's also there's a tragic romance with his character,
Yeah.
at the heart of the movie, which you don't really expect.
There's a tragic romance. There's a failure to secure his place as a normal citizen. He can't be a normal person as much as he tries
literally
to be.
broken man. He has children mocking him for being crippled at the start of during one of his introductions. And yeah, so you get him trying to take that kid under his wing, which is just devastating. And but he's really good in this. So I guess at this point, I hope you've gone to watch the movie if you haven't seen it. Although you might benefit from listening to us talk about it to know what the fuck the movie's about or seeing it. I honestly can't tell you if it is better to see the movie or to listen to this before seeing the movie or to see it then listen to this.
Yes, and I'll just say also this is just for you that I am a little under a timetable, so we can finish off the hour, for sure. But just a heads up.
Okay, if we have to come back maybe some other time we can, but I'll try to go as fast as I can.
All right.
All right. So the botched Budapest mission happens. Control gets thrown out, and then the title comes up, and during the credits, Control dies. Right. And it's one of those things where you could blink and you miss it. We follow the files. We get the whole layout of how the kind of circus operates, all visually told, right? We get the different layers as they're exiting, which is this really sad sequence of just the different people being really sad at watching this guy who clearly they call him Control. God damn it, he must have been a master spy at one point, and he must have done a great job. And now he's ending on this horrible note of his career. And it's this really also. Here's something. Did you know what this movie reminded me of this time watching it, which I didn't expect?
Which one?
Was the Greta Gerwig Little Women?
Whoa, okay.
Because that movie that does the thing where it's it tells the story non-linearly, right? And there's the mix of the warmth of when the whole family was together and the gray that comes later after they've experienced some tragedy, right? There's this is mostly gray, but when they go back to the quote good old days where they're at the Christmas party and shit like that, which is the recurring flashback, there's a lot of warmth in that, which is absent from most of the rest of the film.
Yeah. I believe that is also not in the book, right? That scene, the Christmas party.
I believe it's referenced, but not. It is not a sequence.
Okay.
That's a lot of the book. The book is much more straightforward. John le Carré has a cameo in the Christmas party, by the way.
Oh, does he?
One of the party people.
Oh, good for him.
So, that's a big. So, Control gets forced out. Percy Allied, Toby Jones takes over. And a big thing that kind of leads to him being the guy taking over is that he's running an operation called Witchcraft. Now, Diego, can you explain how witchcraft works?
No, but I think you mentioned how this movie's actually not that complicated. It's just told in a very complicated manner. I mean, right off the bat, you have the bit where it's oh, we were so curious about getting information on this specific outlet of Russian intelligence. Lo and behold, Toby Jones shows up with something from Operation Witchcraft
that comes a little
with
bit,
this exact information.
That comes a little bit. When does that flashback happen?
Does that come later?
It comes a little later.
Damn, this movie fucking moves. I remember that being 20 minutes
in.
It
is 20 minutes in, but so much happens in those 20 minutes. But like we see witchcraft. Like there's a lot of people going like, we need funding for witchcraft. We want to buy a house for our secret source, and we don't really know what it is. But we eventually get 20 minutes in later, we get a flashback. I believe this is after Smiley has kind of been recruited to look into this mole situation, and this is a flashback that happens while they're looking at Control's apartment. And this is important because while they're there, they find the chess pieces with everyone's pictures on it, right? And we find out that not only did Control suspect everyone at the top of the circus, he also suspected Smiley. Like that's how much like he didn't trust anyone by the end of his career, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. But then we get the flashback, and they're like, oh, just what the government has been looking for. Percy has gotten this information, and it's like its topicality is suspicious. Smiley is suspicious, Percy. John Hurt's so good in this.
Oh yeah, he rules.
And they're like, Percy's basically gone around him and has gone to the minister and been like, hey, give me money. I got a secret source. Basically, he's really making a play to take over, like before anything has happened at this point, right? Which is it is one of those, like, aren't you guys supposed to be, doing intelligence work? Not this shouldn't be a political thing. And so Toby Jones like clearly this conniving ladder climber, and he's like, yeah, I got a secret source. I'm not telling you guys because I got to keep them secret, and there's too many leaks around here. So there's already been this problem going on at this point. And you get Kieran Hines like, we should be fighting communism, not each other, which is good. Like, and fucking Toby Estrauss, who's like this, like he's kind of a what would you call him? He's like a toady, right? Like, he's kind of toady to Percy, and he does the language like, we have to decide if we want to be part of the past or part of the future. And John Hurt's like, I should have left you where I found you, which is so good. And that's the other thing about Toby Estrauss is he's actually Hungarian and has been recruited into the circus. So he's like an outsider that managed to get his way to the top. All these guys have reasons to be the spy, right? Like as that are revealed throughout. But yeah, so like everyone's forced out. A year passes. Control dies. An agent named Ricky Tarr, played by Tom Hardy, comes back and makes a call to the undersecretary of the circus and is like, hey, I got information that is vital to the safeguarding of the circus. Contact Peter Gwillem, who is the guy, his boss, played by Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
Probably the first performance I noticed him in. Although, when does Sherlock come out?
I think 2012, but I saw this after Sherlock.
Yeah.
So Sherlock was the first for me.
Although I think he's a hostage negotiator in the movie Four Lions, which is a weird role for him.
Oh, no, that's a good movie.
Yeah, I love that movie, but it's funny watching it now being like, that guy's Sherlock. But, so Peter Gwillem, who's like a really like low on the totem pole type guy in the circus, kind of gets recruited to vouch for Ricky Tarr. Ricky Tarr has information. He's like, there's a mole at the top of the circus. I can basically prove it. I don't know who it is. I just know they exist because of what happened to me. And they reach out to Smiley. And they're like, Smiley, I want you to run this operation. And Smiley at first isn't going to do it. But then he's like, there's a mole, and Control believe there's one. And he told the undersecretary, he's like, he told me. And when he realizes Control believed there was a mole, then he's like, okay, that's real. And that's what basically gets him involved. All of this, it's really simple stuff, but it's all in the first 20 minutes. And those 20 minutes are dense with just like dialogue scenes of people posturing, of all sorts of shit happening, right? Like, I don't know if I want to go too into it.
No, but I mean, it's also worth mentioning that there's some characters established without dialogue who don't come back for like another hour into the movie. Like one of my favorite actors, Stephen Graham, is in the opening just passing by, and then he doesn't become important until like an hour and a half into the movie.
He's pivotal too. And then you get a lot of people like that. You get the first mention of Carla comes pretty early. Carla, who we never see in the movie, who is the Soviet counterpart, basically, to Smiley, right? Like it's their nemesises, right? Which come into play, but we get
Nemesis.
Nemesis. But yeah, so like we can mention him being like he probably doesn't have problem getting money over in Moscow, which is their way of trying bullying the undersecretary into handing over money. All right, I got so many fucking notes. And a lot of it's just breaking down. Like there's so many shots in this of like I said, when they go to Control's apartment, then we get the flashback. When we come back, we see the chessboard with all the pieces on it with all the pictures, and then once that flashback's over, we get Smiley turning the one around that has his face on it, right? And that scene ends with the Control scene with the first talk of witchcraft. Ends with Control being like nothing's genuine anymore, which is like the beginnings of like the Cold War is like breaking these people. Like no one can trust anyone anymore.
Yeah.
And it starts getting like really oppressive.
Yeah, I mean that's where like the production design even like gives it like an extra little boost too, because everything's so gray and like everything looks like it takes place during the fall.
Yeah,
you know, everything's gray, brown, beige.
but I think that's just England.
That might just be England, which is why like spy thrillers are so perfect for there, because they're not sexy like James Bond. They're just this miserable, drained of all life.
So I'm gonna just try to hit the important stuff. But basically, we find out that like witchcraft is this secret source Toby Jones has within the Soviet. He's given them information that's like really good. It's they refer to it as like they use the word treasure and gold dust like repeatedly to reference it as like how good this information is. And it's really made up for the Budapest operation, because when that thing failed, it was like a major disaster, right? It like caused all sorts of like international controversy. It was framed as Mark Strong's character had tried to kidnap a Hungarian general. So like there was tank movements. It was one of those like this almost started a war bad type operations, and it's reflected very poorly on British intelligence. But now that they have witchcraft, they're back in the game, quote unquote, which includes getting direct access to American information, right?
Yeah, that's like the big like goal for Toby Jones' character, right?
Yeah, he keeps bugging him, being like, "Look, we have witchcraft. It is great. They're gonna want it, and we can use this to get ongoing intelligence from the Americans." And they're like, "Great." So that's like the big setup. Now, again, remember, someone at the top of the circus is a mole for the Russians, so it's a big deal that now this is like they're so exposed. And so, like, someone clearly is orchestrating something. No one's totally sure what for a while. Blah, blah, blah. I gotta say, there's a very minor character in this who plays a bigger role in the miniseries and in the book. Mendel. Did you even pick up on this guy?
Yeah, you know why? Because he's in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire as Barty Crouch.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. That guy looks like my Tío Felix. He's a spitting image of a great uncle of mine.
Wow.
I don't know why.
He was also in the Rise of the Cybermen, the Doctor Who story that brought the Cybermen back.
Oh yeah, I actually know that one.
Doctor Who was so much fun when it looked cheap as shit.
Yeah, it's got to be scrappy.
Yeah.
You know, it can't make the Star Trek leap, and I don't mean like
I don't think
like
Star
garbage,
Trek should have made the Star Trek leap.
It needs a little bit. I only say that because they're doing movies.
Movies are different. Movies are different.
Yeah, I think with TV shows, you can do like a thing where it's like it's okay to kind of look like
it is fine if the computer terminals look like they're clearly about to fall over. Like,
yes,
I'm totally fine with that because I'm watching a
show. I want that excitement, adventure energy with Doctor Who and stuff like that.
Well, that guy Mendel, he's a retired, I believe, he's kind of just like a beat cop, right? Like he's a former cop from the special branch.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, like he's no one special.
He's no one special, and they just bring him in. And he basically does a lot of the grunt work. Like you're always seeing him in the background, like moving shit around. He's part of the big file changing operation. We'll get to him later, but he plays an oddly pivotal role and is barely on screen. But there is the great scene where they go to pick him up, and it is this like we get this like entire story in like I think 3 shots, maybe. Which is all right. He goes. Gary Oldman's like, okay, if I want to do this, I want to bring Peter Gwillem in. He's like, I want Peter Gwillem, and then I want to bring in this guy named Mendel. Cut to Mendel in what I assume is his backyard, is like beekeeping. This is what he's been doing in his off time. It is never remarked upon. It's only on screen for like half a second. Cut to they're in the car, and like they have to deal with the fact that like bees have followed them. And there's that scene where like the bee is bugging Benedict Cumberbatch, and then George Smiley just opens a window.
I love that scene.
I know, it's terrific. It's great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, it tells you everything you know about those characters.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, one guy doesn't give a fuck. The other guy is the old master, and this new kid, like, is clearly doesn't know what he's gotten into.
Yeah.
So the first thing they do is he goes like, I want a record. This record isn't that important, so it's easier to get. He's just like, I want a record of everyone fired in the wake of Control leaving, like any sort of purges that happened. And, because there was a lot of forced retirements out of that. Percy has reshaped the circus and has stacked it with people that are mainly loyal to him, right? And 2 names pop out. Connie Sack and what's his name? We just mentioned him.
Mendel?
Jerry Westerby, played by Stephen Graham.
Yes.
And those are like the 2 names that we saw in the opening credits. They were forced out like almost immediately after Control left. They say that. The other thing they start looking for to go through, quote unquote, the Reptile Fund, which is money being paid to, former agents and stuff like that. Look for discrepancies. It kind of reminds me of Heat a little bit. Remember the scene in Heat when they go to the first crime scene, and he's like, "Go to the files, run the name Slick. You're gonna get the phone book. Do it anyway." It's a lot like that. Of just they're going through really meticulous, unexciting stuff for the start of it. But they go to Connie Sack, which is an incredibly depressing scene in this movie. We go to Connie Sack. Who is this actress? Kathy Burke. Who does a great job in this brief scene in the movie. I don't know if I've seen her in too much else. She's in Sid and Nancy from years ago.
She was in Pan. I don't remember her in that movie. She might have had a smaller part.
I saw Pan like once and like barely paid attention. So,
yeah, it's not good.
She barely does a voice in The Sea Beast.
Yeah,
Academy Award
I don't remember that character. Maybe it's it's who I'm thinking of. She does a good job. Mm-hmm. If it's not, I'm sure she did a good job anyway. I just don't know who it is. I like that movie though. Yeah, she's great here. And this scene is a downer.
It's all right. So like, here's some just great filming. So we get a lot of Smiley's day to day, especially before he gets recruited into the circus. We see him go to the optometrist and shit like that. And there's a lot of just like, you can get the sense of like that this guy has nothing in his life currently. He wakes up alone in bed, and the only hint that we get that he is married is that we see on a letter his wife's name. We get one close-up of that early in the film. We only get confirmed that his wife isn't around, not because she is dead, but because she is cheating on him. This information comes 30 minutes in. But we get a lot of that. So before he goes to Connie, we see him at like just a regular kind of shop on the street, right? It's like half a second. We don't really know why. He basically surprises Connie. She's like very happy to see him. And then he kind of acts like, oh, hey, I brought this gift with me, like kind of trying to be like memorable, or like playing nice to get information out of her. And there's something so sad about it. Like that we have seen the motion he's gone through to be like, okay, I'm gonna get the alcohol so I can help kind of, set her up so she can spill her guts about whatever I need her to say, right? Like he clearly has some affection for her, and she clearly has a lot of affection for her and quote her boys. Like she must have been like a bit of a den mother almost, because she talks about the good old days of World War II.
Yeah.
which is a depressing notion. And she's the one who throws that, like, I heard Anne left you again. And she starts like going off, and that's when Smiley like cuts her off. Talk about getting fired. And her thing is that, God, it's just gonna be a lot of me being like, this is so fucking good. But it's the scene of her being like, when she's watching the footage, right? On repeat, and they're just doing the like zoom in on it. God, that's so fucking good.
All the zooms in this movie are fucking nuts.
I know.
They're so good.
And where she's like, everyone knows that like there's like rumors Carla has set up a secret cell in London, and that it's stacked with former ex-military. Well, she was supposed to do the biography on a guy named Polyakov. Polyakov is a cultural attaché, God damn it, for the Soviet embassy. Like a nothing, basically. He's just a diplomat. But there's footage of him at a May Day parade where a soldier just salutes him for half a second. And why would you salute, a bureaucrat like that? Like, what is he doing? And it's like, he would only get saluted if he was former military, which isn't that strange considering the era, but why would they hide the fact that he was former military? So it's like, this like one thing is like huge. Okay, this is the type of stuff that it's like this one guy going like, and it's like, it's not like the guy does like this giant like fucking, salute at him. Like, it's the most like half-hearted salute, like, oh, hey. Like,
yeah, it's a blink and you miss it. The whole movie sets up stuff like that.
It's the coolest shit on the planet. Like, it's the best. And she goes to Percy, and we see Percy and Toby Esterhaus meet with her. And she's like, this guy's definitely got some shady shit going on. And Percy immediately shuts her down and is like, you're spending way too much time on this. Like, leave him alone, which is like odd for him to do, right? To be like, oh, why would he want to keep that a secret? And we find out shortly after we see the sequence of him going to the house that they have bought to keep the... So the implication is Polyakov is witchcraft. He is the guy giving information, right? So that's why he's being kept secret. But we're only slowly putting this together. She also throws out the note, like she's like, oh, there's she's going through old pictures and shit. Like, there's Bill Hayden and Jim Prito, the best friends in the whole world.
Yep, heavy emphasis on the... Yep.
And also, all right, she has that picture. Bill Hayden takes that same picture from Jim Prito's house. So did he give it to her? Like this is, I don't know if this is the era where like people had tons of copies of the same picture.
Maybe,
I feel like Bill might have passed it to her in like an attempt to wash his hands a little bit.
Yeah, maybe, or yeah, because it's a Polaroid,
yeah,
right?
It's a very
you can't really get copies of those.
It looks like the exact same photo. So somehow,
maybe that's what it was.
Bill Hayden passed it to her in some.
Yeah,
probably he maybe gave her the whole file that like she just had. Like, oh, here's a parting gift for when you leave the office. Because everyone likes Bill Hayden, except Gary Oldman, but we'll find out why.
Yeah.
And she has that depressing line where she's like, if she basically puts together like, if you're asking me about this, that means I was right and that something's up, and that this probably goes to the top. And she's like, look, if it's something bad, don't come back. Like, I want to remember you all as you were, which is so sad.
That is fucking depressing.
And that's when we get the first Christmas party flashback, goes like right from that, right? Which makes sense.
Yeah.
What are you about to say?
Then you see her all dressed up and stuff like that too. Everyone looks
a lot better.
Yeah.
Control is fucking giving Percy shit for fucking up the drink.
Yeah.
Like,
He's like, it'll take us 5 hours to get drunk off this shit.
and then Percy's like, I did the recipe. You can see how clearly he doesn't like working under control.
Yeah.
In the background, I don't know if you notice, in the background, like his wife like stands up to be like, Percy, calm down, and Percy like grabs her. Like,
Oh my
he's
god,
like,
no, I
sit the fuck
missed.
down. Like, it's like this insane background detail. They start playing the second best secret agent, which is a great song by Sammy Davis Jr. And everyone's singing along. Everyone's having a happy time. But we see Bill Hayden, Colin Firth's character, making eyes at Smiley's wife.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about, huh?
Well, you know, can we get to the reveal of that?
All right. Bill Hayden's having an affair with Smiley's wife.
Yeah.
We don't get all the details because it comes later where there's the big scene where this guy goes. They interview. This comes way later, but we can just jump to it. Doesn't matter. When they're interviewing Stephen Graham, and Stephen Graham was like he was in charge the night the Budapest operation fucked up, and he's run. He was like Control basically shut down. Like Control, like he realizes he's fucked and doesn't know what to do. So he's like, I called anyone. I called you, even though I knew you weren't home, and I talked to Anne, but she was. And then thank God Bill Hayden showed up, and they're like, wait a minute. Like later, Smiley and Benedict Cumberbatch are like, wait a minute. How did Bill Hayden know to show up? Like, how did they know the operation? Like, he must be the guy. He had some insider information. And then Smiley's like, no, I know why I knew. And then it's like, why? He's like, because he was at my house. He was sleeping with my fucking wife. and then we get the flashback to him when he gets caught with like the shoes undone. Remember? And he gives the gift, the painting, which he's like, I don't like it, but Anne likes it. Which is like, wow.
Yeah. Like, come on, guy, have some
And
self-respect.
that painting becomes like a recurring image. It's like in the opening credits, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Which is like a detail you like just would be like, you're not gonna notice that one until like your fucking fifth watch, maybe. Unless you're like Galaxy Brain shit. But I mean you could follow this movie if you are pausing every 5 minutes to take notes like I did. Like that's what I kinda had to do. Or you have to just be the most focused individual on the planet. But
yeah, and like I can never do that on my first watch. I know some people that can and still get enjoyment out of it. I kind of need to take it all in like at once, and I'm like, okay, now I'll go back.
And also, we're regularly getting the shots of like how the files are passed through everything in the circus, right? Which is the cool that elevator shot where you get the camera inside the elevator.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
And then you get that row of offices inside the office where like they're in that little room, right? Which is like this like soundproof little room where all the guys meet. Which is like that room in itself should have gotten an Academy Award.
I know.
I mean, goddamn.
And it's just like a distinct style for it too.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why this got shut out of like proper awards contention, because another one, like I'll say this, like out of one of the interviews I heard like with Mark Kermode, he was like, oh well, clearly this is gonna get like, you're gonna get a lot of like Academy love and stuff like that. And it's like they didn't get any.
Did they get any? Like this?
They got nominated, but they didn't get any.
They got Best Actor nomination, Adapted Screenplay nomination, and Original Score, which is a great score.
Or maybe he was referring to the British Academy Film Awards, and they did get nominated like by a lot, but they only won 3.
Yeah, they did get nominated for Best Film, which they got Outstanding British Film, which is one of those categories that like they only do like every few years. So.
Yeah, like imagine if we did Outstanding American Film for the Oscars.
Yeah.
You know, I'm surprised we actually haven't, frankly,
hey, it might be
considering this country.
If more people keep complaining about the international film or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And that guy got angry about Joker not winning.
Yeah.
I don't know what Parasite is. Fucking people.
I know. 5 movie year Twitter.
Yeah, basically. And then, so like the other thing is they go through the reptile fund and they find that 1,000 pounds was paid out to Jim Preto, even though he's supposed to be dead. That's the other revelation that comes soon after this. Mm-hmm. And that's when we find that Jim Preto is working. He's now teaching French at like a boarding school, right?
Yeah.
Like, He murders an owl in front of all the children.
I know. It's like so fucking
It was a
brutal.
wild scene. And that inspires the young boy to go talk to him after class, apparently. Which that kid is also named Bill, like Bill Hayden. And there's the really sad, like, where they're like, "Oh, you're the outside." Like, he's like, "I'm new." He's like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "The unpaid Bill. Anyone ever call you that?" And the kid's like, "No."
Oh.
And it's like, well, I know another Bill who was probably called that. And that story was told in a moment of confidence and vulnerability. And you think about that a lot for some reason, Mr. Jim Frito. And they're like, and he's basically like, "You're kind of like me. Like, we're both kind of outsiders, right? Like, you're a good watcher. Like, we're both good watchers." And sets up this like kind of nice relationship between them.
It is. It's real nice, and it's
Also, the introduction of Jim
sad.
Frito is him like his trailer that he's now living in on school property getting stuck in the mud.
God, it's so
And
depressing.
just being like fucking pissed off about it. All right, let me go through. We get a lot of so like as this shit is going around, we see a lot of like the top guys at the circus are all like moving around talking to each other. They know that something's up. There's the one where Kieran Hines kind of corners Peter Gwillem in the elevator, and you're like not sure until like the last minute if it's a friendly conversation or not, right? And then it just turns out he's like, "Oh, he just wants someone to go to lunch with him." Like,
Yeah.
and it's
But I mean, like that's
But-
kind of the vibe of the whole thing. They don't know like who they can trust.
yeah, and it's just like it's everyone's up for questioning, right? So then we get to 40 minutes in, basically. Around the 40-minute mark is when Tom Hardy comes back into the picture. And then we get the extended Tom Hardy sequence with him spying and falling in love, right? He falls in love with Irina, who is the wife of some other, like, KGB hood, right?
Yeah.
He thought it was someone who could be recruited, but it was kind of like a bullshit assignment. He was probably one of Carla's guys set up to, like, like, as bait,
Yeah.
But
Red
he
herring.
sees her getting beaten up, and he's like, he kind of like falls in love with her, And I think this whole sequence and this character in the book too is kind of a deconstruction of the James Bond type character, right? Where it's like he breaks every protocol you're supposed to do. He's not listening to orders, and he falls in love and starts sleeping with this woman who's clearly like she is in a very vulnerable state, right? Like, I'm not saying his emotions are false, but he's not thinking about the precarious. Like, he shouldn't be doing this,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
He really shouldn't be. And she's like, "I want a new life in the West. I can give information." And they try to float that, but no one in the circus is listening. And she finally admits that she knows the name of the mole at the top of the circus. Like, she explains how, like, through her, husband, she's heard these stories, and so she knows who it is. And Ricky Tarr sends that information through, and then shit gets weird. We're like, they're stalling, and he's like, "I didn't get a response. I don't know what was happening." Suddenly the Russians were on the move. I knew something was up. The guy that works with him at the office, his handler, is like brutally murdered.
Yeah, that's the most vile part of the movie.
Yeah, well, no, I think there's one that's like a little worse. Just because of the sheer brutality of it.
Wait. Yeah, there's one more. Sorry.
And you get all that. And it's like this great, like, we don't see the fucking horrible murder torture that probably happened, but you hear the music turned up. So, like, that's like, oh, they turned the music up so no one would hear this guy getting murdered. Get a lot of that. We see Irina return home, and her husband has been, like, gutted in the bathtub. It's like, this is like the moment the movie suddenly gets like really intense. She gets captured, and the shot of her getting put on that ship is so upsetting. Where she's in a stretcher, she gets put on a ship, and there's just like children playing back there. Like, it's just something that, like, you wouldn't know what was going. You would maybe go like something's wrong here, but you wouldn't know that like no, the worst thing that could possibly be happening is happening right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always think about
It's so
in the
sad.
movie Reservoir Dogs, when the torture scene happens when that dude gets his ear cut off. There's that scene where Mr. Blonde he goes out to his car to get the gasoline, right? The camera follows him when the music stops, and you can hear like a father teaching his kid to play baseball in the background.
Something like that,
Yeah,
right?
and it's like Jesus Christ. I had a similar vibe with that sequence. So Tar's like, I fucked up. I didn't know who to trust. Like clearly, I sent this information to people high ranking in the circus, and that's what got Irina captured. He's like, I want you to get her back, and I'll help you and do whatever you need. That's the big thing, right? So, after this,
how that plays out is just soul crushing. This whole movie's pretty
yeah,
crushing.
the movie's really crushing. After this, the movie really picks up steam. I would argue. After this sequence, not like it has been super slow up to this point, but we get a few sequences in a row. Because like after this, we get the Peter sent to get the logbook, right?
Yeah. Well, like what I'll say is like it understands like the escalation of it because like I would say this is a slow movie for the first half, but I don't mean that negative at all.
Yeah.
Like it's very meticulous, and like they're establishing all these different relationships and these different like people who are trying to climb the ladder. But then by the midway point, once all the pieces are in place, every conversation is basically a conflict. Someone's trying to like win a conversation or like get information out of someone. And the movie doesn't stop doing that until bodies start dropping again.
Yeah. It's a movie where it's just like
just at least
it gets you into like how most of the time a spy's life is probably very boring and specific, right? And just that, but then like you never know when people are posturing and when people are being genuine. Like it seems like a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, there's that one girl who works with Benedict Cumberbatch, and she's like even asking like, "What are you doing this weekend?" and stuff like that. And it's like, part of in the back of my head, I'm like, is she interested or is she trying to like?
Well, you get like all the people
get an angle on something.
side-eyeing him, right? Like, and you can't tell like, is that an innocent, just someone like looking, or like, do they know something? And there's a lot of like lingering shots like that. And there is the like that girl makes sure to remember to give him the bag, at the end of it, jumping ahead. But it's a pretty good. It's honestly not the worst plan where he goes in and he has to time it just right. That's a cool shot where he takes the file he needs and goes to the spot where he claimed to be looking, right? Yeah. And then just waits around there, and then right at the time the call is supposed to be made, he times it and then starts walking. So he acts like he was surprised by the guy showing up. Like that takes something. Yeah.
It's the best. And here's a thought.
What was that?
Well, here you go ahead.
You go.
Well, it's less about the movie. It's just like, can Thomas Alfredson do a James Bond? That is not the intention of this podcast for me to champion that. But it is like, he's so good at like this procedural aspect of it. If you give him a budget and like the time, could he do that?
I think what I would really want, honestly, is for him to do the rest of the Carla trilogy. Now, like, there's the problem with like the Honorable Schoolboy kind of being a difficult one to adapt. Mainly because I think George Smiley's like barely in that one, if I remember correctly. Like, so people just skip over, but like you can skip the Smiley's people. Maybe get a better title, but Tailor, Soldier Spy and the Honorable Schoolboy are awesome titles, and then Smiley's People is like, okay, I guess. Like,
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy 2.
2 Tailor
Spy. Yeah, and then Spy 3D or something.
Tailor Soldier Spy Tokyo Drift.
Or Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with a Vengeance. There you go.
There you go. We've done it. Live free or Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. We get the whole also. So that's where Mendel. This is like his big moment. He calls pretending to be a car mechanic, right? Like that's the ploy. and there's a song playing in the background, which is like this offensive, like comic song from the 30s. Did you hear the song?
I didn't listen to the lyrics.
It's called Chinese Laundry Blues. And it's basically a guy named Mr. Wu who like falls in love. It's some story, and it's got like a weird, like quote unquote Oriental riff underneath it. You know,
Oh.
it's not the worst thing, but it's not good either. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a slam dunk or anything.
But that song, that's important because we hear the we hear the people listening to it on the line. They're like, it's like an earworm, you know, like even the mechanics are like getting into it.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that one lady's kind of like humming along to it and bobbing her head or
Yeah,
whatever.
when she's supposed to be taking notes on everything. And
you know, I think that's another thing that makes this movie like such fucking like a fascinating exploration of the sound of material is that like no one here, even if they're like the best at what they do, everyone here is fallible because they're all human.
Yeah.
You know, and like there's no perfect organism, there's no perfect machine that runs all these different aspects of espionage. It's like no, people can fail, so this is obviously
and
all fucked.
It's such a simple point. It's one where they go like, "Hey, look, you there's not like a small chance that you'll get caught. Like it could happen, and if it is, you're on your own. Like we just want this log file." And the point is basically just like he can't bring his briefcase in with him, right? Because you can't take files out of here. But his mechanic, quote unquote mechanic, calls and is like, "Hey, I need to talk to him because his car is all fucked up." And he just goes to the guy. He's like, "Hey, just bring my bag for a minute. It'll take a second." And you know, if he's your coworker, even though you're spies, you're gonna be like, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Like, and then what you don't realize is he's stealing information. And he just does, he's that simple, like, okay, and he drops the files on top of each other and then just sneaks it back into the bag. And just right as he does it, fucking Toby Esterhaus corners him, right? And you're like, oh, fuck, he's caught. But they let him give the bag back. So he gets brought up to Percy. Percy has that incredibly racist comment where they're talking about, like, have you recruited anyone lately? And he's like, I've been talking to some Arabs. And he's like, Arabs, you can rent them, but you can't buy them. Jesus Christ, buddy.
Yeah. So awful.
And, like, so have you heard from Ricky Tarr? And, like, Ben Cumberbatch's trying to play it cool, like, makes a joke. He's like, oh, yeah, we talk all the time. Like, being like, no, like, his way kind of being like, fuck you, I haven't talked to him. And then he shrugs. Bill Hayden gets a kick out of it, by the way. And Percy's like, don't fucking do that shit at me. Someone's put $30,000 into his bank account. Like, we know he's talking to people. He's probably talking to you. We can't prove it. But clearly he's working for Carla now. He's defected and he's being sent back to muddy the waters, right? Like, we don't know why, but it's clearly something, and you're falling for it, and it's going to fuck things up. And they throw him out. Ben Cumberbatch is clearly shaken. The great note, though, is as he's leaving, gets the bag back. So it's like, okay, he got the bag back. That lady who was clearly hitting on him, and he did not seem interested for some reason. He gets back. He's going down the stairs, and he passes Kieran Hines, and Kieran Hines is humming the song. So like he heard the call.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's a great fucking little moment.
Cumberbatch is like, Jesus Christ, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
That's when he goes back to Smiley, sees Ricky Tars there, and just like tries to beat the shit out of him.
Oh, it's so good. Has Cumberbatch ever played someone like this notably angry? Because usually he's like the smarmy genius type, you know?
I don't know. I'm sure he has. I just can't think of him. But yeah, he's good in it. And he's like, I put my fucking career on the line. And then Gary Oldman's like, it's like, well, let's look at the file. And the page that they need is missing. So someone's covering shit up, right? So clearly something's going on. In between this, we also get the shots of, like, we see where the vault is, where all the secret information's kept. We see Toby Esterhaus has an office, like, right near there, where he's on the phone speaking in Hungarian to people we don't know who. And we see someone going in there and, like, taking files out, right? But for what purpose, we don't know. And there's nothing totally strange about it, because, like, shit gets moved around all the time, but still, it's all flying under the radar. That's when Smiley's like, they're going to be watching you. Cumberbatch, so you got to clean up your life. And that's what we see. Cumberbatch was in a gay relationship with someone, which is something I believe with the Peter Glom character is only really, a lot of the gay subtext is only really implied in the book. It's made text in the movie. And that's he goes home and like he basically breaks up because like that could, I believe this is set in like the early 70s. I believe by this point, homosexuality is no longer illegal in the UK, but it is still like a big, like, you're going to get your career ruined if that comes out, right? Yeah. Thankfully, England is now really cool and chill about LGBT people. And then we also get the great monologue about Smiley meeting Carla, which we don't see. He just talks in the miniseries. We see this sequence. Here he just describes it. He's like, I gave him my lighter. He's like, he had been tortured by the Americans, because of course we did. And like he's like fingernails ripped off and shit. He's all fucked up. If he goes back to Russia, he is going to be executed, right? He's like, that's what's going to happen. And he's like, think of your wife. He's like, I went on about the damn wife too much. And he's like telling him more about me. And then he has that break where he's like, I think it's time we just both admit that we've spent our lives searching for the weaknesses in each other's systems, and there's about as much worth on your side as there is on mine, right?
Which is a fucking statement.
Yeah. And then Carla leaves, and he's like, that was Carla. And it's like, that's how I know I can beat him, because he's a fanatic. Like, only a fanatic would go to certain death like that. And he's like, and a fanatic is always harboring a secret doubt, which is a cool line. Yeah. And that's where I guess this is the major theme of the movie, which is just the decline of the British Empire's importance on the world stage, right? This is because we can jump around. Doesn't matter at this point totally, because we already talked about the fucking Jerry Westerby scene and shit like that, and he's listening to the file where he's like, everything the circus thinks is gold is shit. Smiley eventually puts it together. What is happening is this witchcraft is giving them enough information to seem legit, right? But it's all staged and ultimately unimportant. But they're like, to what end? Like, it doesn't really make sense. And then it's like, well, it's not to get any information from the British, it's to get information from the Americans. Like, they're like a honey trap for American information, right? Like, so it's this like really depressing note of like, they're not even the target of this horrible operation that is like ruining lives. It's like they are just the trap to get American information, which is actually important, because the British no longer matter. It's just both become puppets to the two Cold War factions.
Yeah, it's basically about middlemen.
Yeah,
trying to become managers.
Yeah, and it's just really like depressing. Of just like, and that's why Tom Hardy makes that scene where he's like, I wanted to bring this in on my own. I wanted to feel like I was doing something, because a lot of them like don't, they no longer feel that way with their lives. It's like we are irrelevant anymore. We're trying to stop a fucking nuclear war from happening at any moment. Our lives are meaningless, and we're powerless to stop it, basically. And it's really depressing stuff.
Well, I think that's also why, like, the World War II comment that prior agent had, and she was like, oh, like, that was a better time or whatever. Like, maybe everyone felt like World War II, there's battlefields and shit like that.
Yeah, clear lines.
Like, you could, the clear lines, you can make a difference in your immediate vicinity, or at least if not the world around you. And like, this isn't really talked about a lot, but like, wars aren't going to happen like that anymore.
Yeah, we'll never really have a war like that.
Like, there will be like battlefields and shit like that, and there'll be like people like, unfortunately still shooting at each other in streets at some point, but like it doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
And like the desperation to have the sense of control that arena gives you, as disgusting as that sounds, because it is, it does make people feel powerful and lets them attain power. This is harder to attain power within like these structures that they find themselves in, and that's why I also love like the set design and like the street photography of this. Everything's so like tight and musty, and there's like light shafts going through windows, and everyone's framed through like doorways and like hallways and glass, and it's just it's like a prison. It's like this whole movie takes place in a prison.
Everyone feels trapped, and it also feels like everyone's being listened to at all times. Right?
Yeah.
Thank God we don't live in a declining empire that's also a surveillance state.
What's the American version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy?
It'll have
like just the title. Don't think of the movie, but the title.
the title.
Yeah, I'll think of a title.
Bad to the Bone.
So this is a stupid.
Yeah, it'll be some dumb country song that no one likes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Almost Heaven, West Virginia.
Or a good one could be like Creedence Clearwater Revival. Like
there you go.
This one's Creedence, this one's Clearwater, this one's Revival.
This is a masterpiece. We can keep going a little bit longer, but
you haven't even revealed who the spy is yet. So, but that's the main crux of the movie, is just like the weird decline of the British and like people feeling they need to be important. We can just jump ahead, like when Bill Hayden is finally outed as the mole, right? I mean, that's even his argument for why he did it, right? Whereas like the West becomes so ugly, like he's like, both of us are fucked up at this point. And he's like, I'm a man who made his mark, which is like, he wants to feel important. Wants to feel like he actually did something. And, he did, arguably.
Yeah.
And
well, it's like the idea of like disruptors now. It's like, technically Donald Trump was a disruptor. But also like not at all. But like, the apex of everything wrong with this country, but also fucked everything up beyond like even prior.
Yeah, arguably he broke the country beyond repair. Which, whatever the next step of America is, he is the triggering mechanism that led to it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to say like that could ultimately lead to good things in a weird way. Like our country was really fucked up because it's a country that let Donald Trump win. So we clearly had problems before that. We could have a better country on the other side. Could have a worse country on the other side. I think jury's still out.
Or no country.
I don't know. I don't feel as pessimistic about the future anymore, which is weird because like they just moved the nuclear clock as close to midnight as it's ever been. So
I'm gonna talk shit about those scientists and whatever because like it just keeps going back and forth. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I clearly don't know about it that much, but like you're just scaring me now. Like I'm gonna start fighting people.
Well, it was supposed to be a warning of like, hey, everyone in this country listens to scientists, right? Well, they say the world's in a very precarious space now, and we should maybe do something about it. And then no one ever does.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're heading closer to midnight. And it's like, I know, motherfucker. I know. Like, we all know now.
Well, here's the thing. If the Democrats wanted to sweep the next election, they would front load global warming as the main issue. They would win in a landslide. Because
they have some silver, like not to cut you off, but they have some silver bullets. It's healthcare, climate change, police brutality.
Yeah, police brutality. I can look. They should be going in on the police. Police get weird because you can always freak people out about crime. Like that one is. I understand it's iffier ground because it's very easy to trick idiots, but when it comes to climate change and healthcare, it's overwhelmingly in the liberal favor, and they won't go in on it because of who's giving them the money, right?
Right.
And I mean, I'm telling you, it's the reason why right now there's all the talk about like the Democrats never seize the opportunity on the youth, but the youth isn't actually getting more conservative. And I honestly think it's the global warming thing. I think the Republicans have branded themselves so much as the anti-global warming party that no one can really embrace them if you're under the age of like 35.
Yeah, and there are definitely people that are always going to like end up leaning that way through a bunch of different circumstances. That's just going to happen.
There's always going to be.
But the amount of people that are is smaller than
Yeah.
ever. At least it seems smaller.
Well,
than
I was talking with my sister the other day, and she's like really upset with how the Democrats are handling a lot of things right now. And you know, like we disagree on some stuff, but like we mostly align on stuff. But she's also like, I could, even if the Republicans got better, like she's like, I could never endorse them. She's like, they're so anti-gay, they're so anti-women, and they're so anti just global warming, like that. Like they can't fix themselves in a way that could ever win her over, no matter how bad the Democrats got. So
No, hey, the tide's totally turning because like my godparents, who are Democrats, they're very liberal,
Yeah.
right? But they were like, well, you know, Bernie just seems a little radical. I feel like I could have a beer with Biden, that type of shtick, right? But even like over Christmas, my godfather, God bless him, was like, yeah, you know, I guess we do need a military budget as the biggest power on the planet, but you know, do they need $100 billion or whatever? You know, like that's the conversations that are happening now. They're like, why can't we use that for healthcare, education? And I was like, all right, it's something's up because those people were not saying that shit.
Well, it's also things are getting. We might be going into a recession soon. Is the other thing, and the thing is that like people are hurting right now, right? But rich people are making more money than ever, which that does not go unnoticed. So, and collapses like that. I mean, the last collapse, the last recession spawned anti-capitalist and ultra-capitalist movements, which seems to happen. But I think the ultra-capitalists have already burned themselves out through Bitcoin, right? So,
it seems that way, yeah.
So I don't know. Shit is about to get interesting, but don't waste your time on people who are just racist.
No. Yeah, instead, just waste your time watching Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Which is fantastic. Is there any other stuff we want to
talk
start
about
winding down with?
Just the Jim Prito stuff. We finally get Gary Oldman meets with him, and he kind of talks about how he was captured and tortured and all that shit. Arena is assassinated in front of him, which is the worst scene in the movie, which is just brutal.
Yeah. Oh my god. I like gasped. I forgot. Like the shot just holds, and then a little bit of what's left of her brain just like.
And they leave her body.
Oh,
they like leave the body in the room with him.
It's so awful.
We also find out that like the story is because like he's like, did any of the? I tried to hold off as long as possible, but I had to crack at some point. Did any of the people like whose cover I blew get out in time? And Smiley's like, no, like a lot of them got taken out. And like the word is you gave him up to save yourself, which is like Jim Prito's like even more pissed off about that. And there's like the whole conversation. Then it's like, and then suddenly they just let him go. Like they didn't kill him, which is like odd. And he gets sent back. He meets with Toby Esterhaus. So Toby Esterhaus is the one that greets him, like debriefs him. Gives him the 1,000 pounds, I think they said. Sends him on his way and says, like, and to forget all of Control's nonsense about the mole and don't think about Tinker Tailor. Like, forget all that. And he's like, and then I left. And that's when Smiley's like, who told Toby about Tinker Tailor? Like, that's the first kind of real, like, why would he have that information? And so that's what leads a lot of the shit into motion. They basically kidnap Toby Esterhaus, and fucking Smiley folds him like laundry on that runway. Like
it's so great. You know how they did that shot?
How? I've seen that. I've seen the take, but you explain it.
Okay, yeah. So they used a 2,000 millimeter lens. That alone costs like thousands of dollars. It is also apparently like 39 pounds. It might be the heaviest lens ever crafted. There might be heavier stuff. So a telephoto lens, anything more than, I believe, 50 millimeters, like 65 millimeters, compresses the space so the background's more blurred out. So you get those nice bokeh effects. It's not the only way to get those bokeh effects, but what it does is compresses the space, makes it great for close-ups. And if you shake it, that's how you get the motion sickness. So whenever you're watching Transformers, that's because Michael Bay likes using telephoto lenses, and you're like, what am I looking at? That's why. But for a 2,000 millimeter lens, it allowed them to film on the runway without basically endangering any of the cast and crew.
Even though it looks like the fucking plane's right there.
Yeah, which is the point of that scene. He's like threatening.
Yeah, which is a
him.
hell of a
Like,
bluff, but like it fucking works. Like Toby
yeah.
Esterhaus cracks immediately, and like
I fucking would
Yeah.
too. I'd be like, I'll admit to anything. Just get me out of here.
yeah, and he's like he gives up the information. He's like, here's where the house is and all that stuff. Like that's basically what they're looking for. Like, where is this house that they've been trying to find? And he's like, but look, everyone at Top Circus knows about Tinker Tailor. Like I told everyone was talking about it. So it's still but it narrows it down a little bit. I think they all kind of knew Toby. Like he's such a worm. He couldn't have been the spy. So that's when they set up. They have Ricky. They fly Ricky Tar to Paris to go to the Paris office to make contact. And he does that thing of, he goes, hey, I'm Ricky Tar, I'm trying to get back in. I have information regarding the safeguarding of the circus. That sends all of the circus into a tizzy. They all meet, and Smiley and fucking Peter Gwillem just go to the house and just wait. And they wait to see who shows up. And it ends up being Bill Hayden. And that was him. It's that sequence and the stealing of the files, which are like the two most exciting scenes in this movie. And they're incredibly simple stuff. I mean, literally, the biggest action scene, the end of it is just two guys sitting in a chair, one guy pointing a gun at the other. And Bill Hayden admits, also Bill Hayden is like a depraved bisexual character, by the way, because he was sleeping with everyone. Like that's his one trait. Like they established early on is that he's a womanizer. But like when he's confessing, he's like, "There's a girl, tell her I love her, give her some money." There's also a boy, just pay him off. And yeah, it's sucked up. And he's like, "It wasn't my idea to sleep with your wife. Fucking, it was Carla's idea." He was like, he knew you were a problem, George, but if I was cheating on your wife, that you wouldn't be able to see me straight, and it worked for a little bit. And he's not wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the one scene that leads him to dismiss it. But that's when you get the reveal that he's like, it wasn't that he was staying at his house that weekend. Jim Prito went to Bill Hayden the night before the Budapest operation, basically to warn him, right? And because deep down, he knew that Bill was the spy. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah.
And
Ugh.
then we get Jim. We get him. He yells at that kid, which is awesome.
So sad.
Which is just him. I just in my head I have to hope that like later he went, look, I was going through some stuff. Don't worry, everything's cool now.
Yeah.
But we give there's no indication of that in the movie. So
No.
for all we know, that kid thought he had a good relationship with his teacher, and then he was just destroyed.
Yeah. Sorry, son. I had to go kill my ex-lover.
Yeah. We also get a great image of human defeat, which is Toby Jones when we go to see Bill Hayden in the prison. Smiley is arriving as Toby Jones is leaving, and Toby Jones is just walking in the rain with like just his eyes are completely dead without an umbrella.
Oh, it's so
which
good.
is just a perfect image of like someone realizing that they fucked up horribly. And yeah, then we get
You know what other image I really love, even though it's fucking just destructive. Tom Hardy just waiting outside.
Yeah.
Looking in the window.
Well, Smiley also lied to him and is like
Yeah.
didn't lie technically, but where he's like, look, I'll do this, but you have to give me your word that you will get her out of there. You'll get Irina out of there, and that I'm going to have a family. He goes, like, I'm not going to end up like you lot. Like, that's his line. And Smiley's like, we'll do our utmost, which isn't a lie.
It's not a lie, but it's not a truth either.
It's an omission. Not calling you a lie. I'm not calling you a truther.
Yeah. That's the sequel. Yeah. That's the opening line. Tom Hardy's calling Gary Oldman not a truther.
There you go. Yeah, that whole montage of Jim Prito killing him is set with like, we see Tom Hardy, who's like, life is destroyed. We see Connie Sachs like all by herself. Like, there's a lot, and it's set to La Mer. And
oh yeah, it's fantastic.
And we get that, the shot of Jim and Bill Hayden at the Christmas party, and then Bill Hayden getting shot in the face, and they both look at each other, and the Smiley ended up, now he's in charge of the circus. And
Surely that will bring his life some sense of meaning.
yeah, and his wife does reunite with him at the end. His basically
true.
unseen wife.
Mhm.
And it literally ends with like a close up on his face and applause, right? But it's like
Yeah.
like the amount of lives destroyed to get to this place. It's just like, good lord.
It's like, even if he thinks it's worth it in that moment, by the end, he's going to not feel
Yeah.
any full.
And I'll say the sequels are mainly about doing damage control for like the disaster of this leak, right? Like,
Oh, okay. Fascinating.
the circus is kind of like fucked after this incident. So Smiley's trying to make up for it partly by going after Carla. So like if he gets Carla, then I'll make up for it. Oh, the only image we ever get of Carla in the movie is the lighter. We see the lighter.
Ah, yeah.
So from to George from Anne with love. Which, hey, which does that lighter comes back in the book sequels too. Like that's a major point.
Oh, wow. It's like straight up, like just nonstop continuity. I assumed it was like other operations with some bleed over, but that sounds
I
like
believe,
it's
if I
one
remember
narrative.
correctly, the Honorable Schoolboy is mainly another operation with bleed over, but Smiley's People is very specifically Smiley versus Carla.
Oh, nice.
And if I remember correctly, this isn't a spoiler, but the last like imagery in the book is that lighter. Like that lighter plays an important part of like the closing of the book. So, yeah, it'd be cool if they made another one, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's been a little too long at this point.
Yeah, legacy sequel. Now you have to become
Well-
the Tinker, Tailor,
well-
Soldier, and Spy.
Well, like I said, the last book published while Lecari was still alive was A Legacy of Spies, which is a George Smiley story. I don't think he's the main character, though. You know who is? It's Peter Gwillem. He's the main character.
Oh, okay.
And it takes place kind of like way after, and it's kind of about reckoning with some of the complicated things that had happened during that career, some of the morally questionable stuff that George Smiley did. And it's kind of like already like coming to terms with like his characters. It's an interesting like closing the door on his own career type thing. Although I think there was one other book published after, which I don't think was a spy novel, and then there was something published after his death. I haven't read any of those, so I can't comment on them.
Well, I am definitely interested in checking them
They're
out.
good stuff.
Now.
They're good if you like spy fiction. They're really good stuff.
Yeah, take that, Tom Clancy.
Yeah.
All right. We have to wrap up now.
Yes.
But yeah, this is a great fucking movie. Any final points you want to make before I announce the next episode? Because I just put in the number.
Go watch this shit. Check out other adaptations, specifically Little Drummer Girl, which was fantastic. And like completely flew under the radar for reasons I don't know why. Which wild performances in that from Michael Shannon and Florence Pugh. Really, really worth checking out. And yeah, this is. I hope this maybe gets you interested in some of this fiction. I really like Lecari's work in adaptations that came from it. So I hope this opens some doors.
Same here. That definitely opened for me. So what also opened is next week's episode, Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive.
Hey!
Yeah, there was another one we just added today, like officially, and I was like, okay, I want to watch it, but I was like, am I gonna have to like track it down through some other measures? But no, Drive. I own Drive.
Drive will be easy.
Yeah.
We'll do that other one whenever we get to it.
Yes, we will see when. But yeah, so go rewatch Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive. And enjoy yourself, Matt. Thanks for joining me.
I can't imagine anyone listening to this podcast has a copy of Drive readily available.
This is like for the people that watch Drive in theaters. Yeah. it's for us.
It's for the people that listen. Everyone who listens to this has this movie. So yeah. This is what this is for. They're the only people who listen to this podcast. So.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me, Matt. Links to everything we have down below, because weird social media stuff. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. If you didn't like this, like and subscribe anyways, because you might find something you do like. We have been professionally unprofessional.
Bye.